Thank you all for being here for this meeting of the Town Board of the Town of Carmel. Donna, could you just turn that down a hair, please?
Yeah.
Turn the volume down on that a little bit. Test, test. It's not too loud, is it? It's okay? All right. Thank you all for being here for this meeting of the Town Board of the Town of Carmel. This is the first part of our meeting is going to be a special Town Board meeting in regards to the water infrastructure for those Carmel Water District Number 2 water users. There's 2,346 taxable district parcels in the Carmel Water 2 district. That includes the extension, which goes out Stoneleigh Avenue towards Putnam Hospital Center, and it services the condos at that section of the water district. So 2,346 total parcels that use water in Carmel Water Number 2. I think that's important for everybody to know that. But before we get started, we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. So would everybody please rise? And Councilman Schneider, would you lead us?
It's my honor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you please remain standing and for a moment of silence and reflect upon the great country that we live in, with the rights that we have given to us through our Constitution. And given light of the events over this past weekend, let's be thankful that we're able to have assembly in a hopefully peaceful and civilized manner. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, once again, thank you all for joining us here tonight. I'd like to thank the Carmel Central School District for allowing us to use their library for this meeting. It was originally scheduled for the Carmel Fire Department, but we became aware that the Carmel Fire Department wasn't going to handle the amount of people that were going to come out for this meeting, and we decided to relocate it here, which was a good move based on the amount of people that are here now. So this meeting is an extremely important meeting for all of you, and we're going to present to you what our plans are for the future with respect to the improvements that we'll be making to the Carmel Water District Number 2, all you the water users in the Hamlet of Carmel. Why is it important? Because it's going to affect all of you with respect to your special district taxes that you pay now in your tax bill when you receive it. So this water district, like all the other water districts around, it's an aging water district. And we do have to invest some money in it. You have to invest some money in it to protect your clean water, so you have clean water coming out of your taps in your individual homes, which is extremely important. So you're going to learn a lot about the water system tonight. You're going to learn about the water distribution mains. You're going to hear about the water treatment plant that we will have to upgrade at some point, and you're going to be hearing about water storage tanks as well tonight. So there's a lot of information that you're going to learn tonight, and then you're going to learn about the costs associated with it, the bonding as a capital project, and what those expected costs might be. Mary Ann Maxwell, our town controller, is here. She's going to go over that with you after the presentation that's made by Richard Franzetti, our engineer, and John Fulchetti, our consulting engineer. But before we get started, I do want to thank some folks that are joining us tonight on the state level, and we're going to have somebody from Congressman Maloney's office is here now. Welcome, thank you. And we have a representative from Peter Harcum, Senator Harcum's office. And you'll hear later on, well, they know why they're here, but you're going to hear why it's very important for them to be involved in this project from a funding perspective, from grant funding and things like that's going to help us offset the cost of this project. So we're hoping that there's going to be those funds available through grants, which we're going to be applying for, and you'll hear that later on from the engineering department also, which grants we're going to be applying for. So we have Rich Franzetti, our town engineer, is over here. John Fulchetti, PE, our engineering consultant, is right there. Mary Ann Maxwell, the town controller. Mary Ann, thanks. Phyllis Borges, the deputy town clerk, is down to my right. Carl Albano, Putnam County Legislator, District 5 is here. Thanks, Carl. Joe Castellano, Putnam County Legislator, District 7 will be joining us. Amy Sage, Putnam County Legislature, District 8. Neil Sullivan, Putnam County Legislature, District 9. New York State Assemblyman Kevin Byrne is on his way. He will be joining us shortly. Samantha Espada, Hudson Valley Regional Assistant for U.S. Senator Kristen Gillibrand's office. Is she here yet? No. Samantha? Okay, hopefully she's on her way. Paige Banfield, Office of Outreach and Grants, U.S. Congressman Sean Maloney's office is here. Paige, thank you for being here. Aiden Bodie, Staff Assistant to New York State Senator Peter Harkin's office is here also. Aiden, thanks for being here. So, and all the town board members are present with us this evening as well. And thank all of you for being here for this special meeting regarding water to infrastructure. So, without any further ado, we're going to, I'm going to pass the mic over to Rich Vanzetti. All right, people that are standing in the back, there are open seats if you want to sit down as opposed to standing the whole time. There's some seats over here, this side, there's seats on that side, but if you choose to stand, that's fine also, but there are seats available for you if you like to sit. So. Richie Brand is up. I'm sorry, Tommy Brand is here from Infomark. Those are the operators. Infomark's the operators for this water district up here in the Hamlet of Carmel, the water and sewer district. So Tommy's here representing Infomark.
Kurt Mattress from Hazen and Sawyer.
Kurt, what's your last name?
Mattress.
Kurt Mattress from Hazen and Sawyer. They're an engineering firm as well that's joining us tonight. There's a report that will be submitted from Hazen and Sawyer with respect to this particular project. So I think I have everybody. Greg Fulchetti is the Carmel Town Council, all the way down to my left. And everybody? Okay, I think I have everybody. So without any further ado, we're going to start now with Rich Franzetti, PE Town Engineer, Town of Carmel. Rich.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'm just going to set up back here. I'm better when I stand and talk, so. Hi, good evening. In case you didn't notice the exits, there's an exit door over there, an exit door back here. Obviously, the doors you came in behind you, so those are your exits when you need to, if anything happens. You need to use the facilities, out these doors, down the hall before the next double doors. The bathrooms are on the left-hand side.
Mike's on.
I think the mic's on.
Is it on?
Yeah, they close.
Okay, is that better? No. Is that good?
Rich, you may have to hold it.
It was fine the way we were.
Yeah, Rich, pull it off there, and I think the cable on the bottom where it plugs into the mic, you may have to hold that.
Is that better? Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
No.
The speakers are pointing out there, that's why. You're not hearing what they can hear it fine, you just can't hear it. Because the
All right,
speakers
I'll
are
hold the
pointing
mic.
out.
So as Supervisor said, we're going to have talk about Carmel Water 2, just briefly what we're talking about tonight, overview of the system, description, source where we get our water from, the treatment plant, or the treatment options and plants, distribution and storage, and cost and funding. So what we'll be presenting tonight is I'll have John Fulchetti will be talking about the funding aspects, and Mary Ann Maxwell will talk about the costs, and we have about 26 slides, sorry, counting this one. And at the end, we have an opportunity for people to ask questions. So if you don't mind, please hold your questions, write them down, and we'll get to them and we'll address them as best as we can. So Carmel Water District 2, the plant is located at 1744 Route 6. It was built in 1976. It serves the population here in Carmel Water 2 of 5,300 people. It's the town's main commercial area, government facilities, and the regional hospital. And there are approximately 2,000 service connections. You guys probably see some of this information out of your annual water quality report that you receive. Kind of an overview or a map of where we're at. The plant is located right there.
No, Rich, can you move over closer to the screens? Because I think everybody's looking at you, they're not looking at the screens. They're looking at you speaking, so if you go closer over there, I think people will focus over that way.
Look at it, that screen. That screen, everybody's.
No, Rich, I didn't mean for you to get on top of the screen. Come over here, right by Carl, stand right by Carl.
So the water treatment plant is located right here. The high school where we're at is right over here. So your water treatment plant is really, up the block, make a left, and you go down to Route 6. It's immediately over there. As you may or may not know, the source of the water is Lake Planita. It's the raw water source. It's owned by the New York City DEP. And the raw water cost that you pay as residents here is about $628,000 per year. That's over the average over the past 5 years of water use. As the source water, it's a natural body of lake. It has certain treatment criteria, but it's impacted by seasonal changes which affect water quality in terms of turbidity, increases in color, algae growth, and things to that effect. So you probably know what you see and taste when you're drinking your water. The treatment plant is permitted for 1 million gallons per day, or 1 MGD. You'll hear that term used interchangeably. So when we say 1 MGD, it's 1 million gallons per day. The average daily plant flow is about 800,000 gallons per day, or 0.8 million gallons per day. And the maximum flow is 1.6 million gallons per day. That flow is, you'll see that flow more in the summer, warmer months, is when the plant is able to push that type of flow out. But on average, it's about 800,000 gallons per day. It's a direct filtration plant. There are 3 diatomaceous earth filtration units, which are really glorified swimming pool filters. That sounds silly, but that's what they really function as. And we use sodium hypochlorite as disinfection for the system. This is a brief picture of the units. These are the filtration units. Get up here. That's the diatomaceous filtration unit. What happens is it just filters out the system. This is inside the building. I have some other pictures of outside the building, which I can show later. The supervisor had asked me to pull them together. They're not in this slide, but I will show you what the outside of the building looks like later on. During Q&A, I'll get them up there. But that's what the inside of the plant looks like. The plant, due to its age, remember it was 1976, inefficient operations. There's a lot of backwash issues. About 15% of the treated water, 10 to 15% of the treated water is used as backwash. It's recommended that the plant be replaced. We mentioned that Kurt is here. He's from Hazen and Sawyer. The town contracted Hazen and Sawyer to do a study on a new water treatment plant. And so he's here. Part of that study was to figure out the safe yield of Lake Planita. Every water body has a natural safe yield. You can only produce or give so much water before you have impacts on it where it won't be able to give you drinking water. And the future demand. We're looking now into the future. If we're going to put a new water treatment plant in there, we're not going to build what we have again. We're going to build it for the future so it can accommodate the future growth within the town. The planning year we have for that is 2050. That was what Hazen and Sawyer has done as part of their report. The treatment plant size is based on the cost, treatment plant size, of course, is based on demand and the raw water quality. So right now, part of Hazen and Sawyer's study is they're sampling the water there on a regular basis. They're capturing when the lake turns over. It turns over twice a year, in the spring and in the fall. So they caught the fall one, and we're looking to get the spring one. So it's when the natural turning over of lakes is what happens. So the findings that we have so far of the sustained safe yield of Lake Planita is from 0.8 to 1 million gallons per day. The demand in 2050, or the average day demand as estimated in the studies, it ranges from 0.82 to 1.34 million gallons per day. So we're right there on that cusp, right? And the maximum day demand in 2050 is 1.31 to 2.15 MGD. So it shows that, so those results show that Lake Oneida is able to meet current demand. We're good right now, but may not be able to do so in the future. The preliminary, the alternative water sources have been looked at, and for former water district 2 and are being considered. Options include either the West Branch, Croton Falls Reservoir. You're still beyond New York City DEP's dime for that one. Those are New York City water bodies. You still have to pay New York City, or possibly Lake Mahopac. So now we'll talk about the distribution system. So we started at the source, we went to treatment, now we're going to how it gets to where you're at. Part of the reason why we're here is to talk about those pipes that everyone's seen. So there are about 52 miles of pipe in the system total. Sizes ranges from 6 to 12 inches. Existing material of those pipes are unlined cast ductile iron, lined ductile iron, asbestos cement, or PVC. The age ranges from about 1 to 60 years old. So your pipes, we have newer pipes in there, we have older pipes in there. There are dead end sections. The major one is Stoneleigh Avenue, and others include Dykeman Road and Lakeview Road. We have a few others, I just didn't list them all up here. But there are dead ends. Dead ends create their own problems. It is what it is in a system. All water systems have them. And we have about 350 fire hydrants in the system. Kind of this is a map that was part of the distribution study that John Polchetti pulled together for the town. To get a sense of, it's kind of hard to read it, I know, but this, just so everyone knows, this, it hasn't been, no, I haven't put the PowerPoint presentation online yet. I'll have it on tomorrow, so this will be online, along with some of the other information that was handed out tonight, the tank reports, which we'll be talking about shortly. But the tank reports will be put on the website, they'll be put on our website, engineering aspect. So you have, when you look at this so you understand it, there's ductile is the blue, ductile iron, cast iron, PVC is the green, transite, which there's some red, you know, and then all the parcels are in here. This is the water district, these are the boundaries of the district. And you see the hydrants are the red dots dotted throughout the system. As I mentioned, we performed a distribution facility study. Coupons were collected at various locations, Oneida Ridge Road, Tower Road, West, how do you say it, John? West Collier. I always say it the wrong way, I'm not going to repeat it. Everett Road, Seminary Hill, Houston, and ShopRite. Route 301 was photo documented. We didn't have it. There's going to be a picture in the next slide to show you. The coupons that were collected demonstrate significant consistency. That's a good thing. Online pipe demonstrated various degrees of tuberculation and sedimentation.
I know it's important because I don't know what a coupon means. I just showed some of us.
Okay.
So I don't mean to interrupt.
You're
but-
fine, that's a good question. No, when I show you the picture, I'll explain more about it. Okay. Thank you. The question was, you wanted to know what a coupon was. I will explain what a coupon was in the next slide. So I do apologize for not having it on this one. And the line pipe demonstrates no tuberculation or sedimentation. So to answer this gentleman's question, a coupon is a cut of a pipe. There's different ways to do coupons. We call these coupons. We went out and we cut sections of pipe out. We tried to grab them where we had line breaks so that we weren't doing extra work, but we actually did some of the work. And as you can see, the tuberculation is in Route 301. This is Everett Road and Kelly Ridge. This is the intersection of Church and Seminary Hill.
Rich, point to one over here, so the audience is. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Get closer with the mic, Rich. They really can't hear it.
And this is just a 10-inch ductile water main in front of Houston Commons, a newer pipe that we have. So Route 301, Everett and Kelly. That's the intersection of Church and Seminary Hill. And I'm not repeating that one. Higher?
A little higher.
So the distribution facility plan findings that there was no need for pipe rehabilitation where PVC or transite or line cast / ductile pipe exists. And that kind of makes sense. Where there's unlined pipe, you have issues. Where there's line pipe, you shouldn't. Unlined cast or ductile iron of either type, it's recommended that it be rehabilitated or replaced. And we realized when we did the coupons that the ductile iron is capable of withstanding a cleaning operation versus a full replacement. This drawing kind of shows the areas where we're recommending. The green is where we're recommending to have the pipes clean, and then we also have a supplemental main along Stone Lane Avenue. Recommended. We also recommended as part of this distribution study, a valve replacement and insertion program should be considered. The reason why that was done is that we realized that while we were going to collect the coupons, we weren't able to section off a lot of the areas in our system. And in order to have, the system, in order to be able to repair pipes when they break, or to be able to do work on the system, you have to be able to section off the valves and section off areas. We weren't able to do that, so we weren't able to collect coupons everywhere where we wanted, but we collected a bunch of them where we had to. So that's why we recommended a valve replacement insertion program. We also recommended an alternative supply to Putnam Hospital Center. They only have one line going there now. The recommendation is just an alternate supply. That's an issue I'm sure that will be discussed later on, so we'll hold off on that one. And there's a backlot main between Houston Road and Stone Lake Avenue that should be abandoned in favor of a new main. We've gone and fixed that line a couple of times. Whenever it was installed, it was not installed correctly in the sense of it wasn't on the correct bedding. It's a good pipe, it works, it functions, but due to just settling, it will sometimes crack and break, and we have to go back in the backwoods to fix it. So with distribution, we talked about pipes. The pipes also not only go directly to your home in some instances, but they all go to the storage tanks that we have. We have 3 gravity atmospheric tanks, total capacity of 1.1 million gallons. They're located on Lindsay Drive, 300,000 gallon tank there, built pre-1974. Everett Road is a 300,000 gallon tank, was built in 1976. And the ShopRite tank is located, that should be on Platform Ridge in Hillcrest Commons. It's a 500,000 gallon tank, and it was built in 1963. The town board asked the engineering department to have a company come in and do water tank inspections. So we had those 3 tanks inspected. We had all the tanks in the town of Carmel inspected. There are 9 of these tanks throughout the town, but only 3 that are in this specific district. And the conclusions for Carmel Water 2 is that the ultrasonic test on the walls demonstrate the tanks are structurally sound, that they recommended to reline and epoxy both the interior and the exterior of the tanks, to install mixers, and to provide safety upgrades. The reports that we distributed, that some of you may or may not have, that will be posted on the website tomorrow, you'll be able to read through that and see what they recommended. There's a laundry list for each one, different list, but list for each one.
Rich, just real quick, can you just explain to them what the mixers are?
Mixers.
So the question from Councilwoman McDonough and Supervisor Schmidt was, explain what the mixers are. So right now, the tanks don't have mixers. I have some pictures again that are not part of this slide presentation, but I have, and I can show you that there is sediment building up on the bottom of the tanks. If you had the mixer system in there, that sediment would never settle in there, and it keeps the water, it keeps the water fresh, right? What else would it do, Tom? It keeps
It accepts the water from stratifying.
right. So the water stratifies within the tank. That keeps it in a well-mixed, uniform, homogeneous temperature, and be able to distribute it out. So we did some preliminary, so everyone wants to hear about costs. We're going to touch on it, and I'm going to hand this over to Mary Ann soon enough. We've done original work already that some of you may or may not be aware of. We've been to Glenlida Ridge, Glenview Drive, Glenview North, and New York State 301. About 13,000 feet of pipe have been replaced at a cost to date of $1.9 million. That's already been bonded, and that work is set to be completed this year. The cost for the water tank inspection, so in that report that'll be posted up online, it gave us numbers to do this rehabilitation for each of the tanks. For Everett Road, it was about $370,000. For ShopRite, Clapboard Ridge, it was about $500,000, and for Lindy, it was $372,000, for a total of $1.3 million. I know you're going to add those 3 numbers up. It will not equal out to $1.3 million. However, that $1.3 million is the number that Mary Ann used to account for any bonding in the future and all the work that needs to be done for that. So she bumped that number up, so that's why that's there. Mary Ann will touch on that when she speaks. The inspection findings, those cost of rehabilitation, again, includes the sandblasting and the epoxying of the interior and exterior of the tanks, removal of that sediment, installing a mixing system, and installing miscellaneous signs and safety features. So I will now hand this over to Mary Ann. How am I going to do this?
Okay.
Good evening. All right,
We're looking at here,
I think you have to hold the bottom of that onto the mic. I think that connection's not good. So hold it towards the bottom.
okay. Can you hear me?
yes?
Good? Okay. All right, so what we're looking at here is a debt service cost analysis. What Rich touched on earlier was there's 3 projects that are currently, well, 1 is underway and 2 are being discussed tonight. The one is the water line replacement, which is estimated at $2.3 million. The other one is the distribution facility plan, which is estimated at at a high of $13.3 million. And the water tank maintenance, which is estimated at a total bonding cost of $1.3 million. The total cost for the water tank maintenance was $1,265,000, but I did estimate that at $1.3 million because we do have to include bonding costs in that. So the total estimated debt, including those 3 projects, is $16.9 million. So if we were to bond that out at 15 years at an assessed value of $407,000, your estimated annual debt would be $585. If we were to bond it out at 20 years, it would be $476. And if we were to bond that out at 30 years, it would be $375. The water meter project, which is replacing all of the water meters in Water District Number 2, is estimated to cost $1,820,000 for Water District 2.
Including the extension.
No, just one. Yeah.
So that,
Okay, good. So that cost over a 5-year term would be $155 for 5 years. So the total estimated debt for including those 3 projects and the 5-year for the meters at 15 years, again at assessed value of $407,000, would be $740. $740 for 15 years. Okay, now after the 5 years, when we pay off the meters, that cost will go down. Okay, 20 years would be $630, and 30 years would be $530. Now the water meter, the water treatment plant,
the water,
the water treatment plan, I was given estimates as a low of $12 million, a mid-range of $15 million, and a high range of $18 million. Good? Okay, so again, at an assessed value of $407,000, at a high of $18 million, the cost of 15 years would be $613. At a 20-year bond, the cost would be $496, and at a 30-year bond, the cost would be $385. Per taxable parcel, yes, that's an annual cost. At that assessed value, $407,000. So obviously, if your assessed value is lower, the cost would be lower. If the assessed value is higher, it would obviously be higher. So the total estimated debt to include those 3 projects we talked about earlier including the water meter project, and an estimated high of 18 million for the plant. We're looking at 36.7 million in debt. Now, if we were to bond that all out today and, begin paying that down, you would be looking at again, at an assessed value of 407,000, you'd be looking at 1,353 for 15 years. And again, that would go down after the 5-year water, meters, sorry, after we paid off the meters. 20 years would be 1127, and 30 years would be $915. Now, just keep in mind that these projects are going to take place over the next 5 to 10, 5 to 7, 5 to 8 years. So obviously the 2.3 million of the water the water line replacement, that's underway. So we would look to bond that out probably, I would say next year after we were to pay the retainage. The meters is also beginning soon, so we would be bonding that cost out only for 5 years, so that would be paid down in 5 years. The 13.3 million, we would bond that out over, as the projects take place. So we're not going to bond that full amount out, out right away. We have issued separate bans for each project and each stage of the project. So we've already issued a ban for the water meters of 750,000. So once that project is done, we would bond out the full cost for the 5 years. The water line replacement, we've already issued a ban of 2.3, and if that project does come in lower, we would bond out the lower amount. We wouldn't bond out the full amount. Also wanted to point out that there is existing debt in Water District 2 that will decrease in 2022. It will decrease again in 2023 and again in 2028. There's also existing debt in Carmel Sewer District number 2 that will mature in 2020. So if you're also a taxpayer in Sewer District number 2, which I think a lot of the residents in Water 2 are also taxpayers in Sewer 2, you would see your Sewer 2 capital debt decrease substantially in 2021 because that bond matures in next year. Okay, so I think you want to, yes.
How much of the debt is going down in 2020 and 2022? I just see some hands back.
2020 and 2022. I think the annual cost was about 68,000, and then it's going down to like 40. I can get those numbers. I don't know off the top of my head.
Can you break it down so people understand? When we break down the numbers of 476, 155, 496, what's coming off? I think that's your question.
You want to see like a retiring debt? Okay. I mean, I could.
You have no idea now? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can look into that. Yeah, I can do like a spreadsheet. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell because we'd have to see when these projects are all bond. If this is just a case scenario if we were to bond it out today, But and I think there is a slide later on that's going to go over like a timeline. So I think we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about when things are going to be bonded. Estimate, these are estimates of when they'll be bonded. And again, this is an estimate at 407,000. So assessed value.
I know a couple of people have their hands up. We were going to wait until the end to take questions. All right, let's do that, because if I allow one or two, then everybody else who has a question should.
Some of the questions might be in.
Okay.
Presentation.
Okay, right. All right, okay.
We'll talk very quickly about funding sources. The vast majority of the funding for water projects in the state of New York come through the Environmental Facilities Corporation. That's a quasi-public organization. It gets its funding from the EPA under either the Clean Water Act or the Safe Drinking Water Act. There are two pools of money that they manage. One is clean water, and those are basically sewer and stormwater type projects, and the other one is a drinking water pool of funds. And that's really what we're talking about today. They offer grants, subsidized or low interest loans, or market rate interest loans. Basic application criteria is an engineering report, a bond resolution by the board, and compliance with the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Once the facility plan for the distribution system is accepted by the board, we go through seeker and they adopt a bond resolution. That application to EFC will go in immediately. There's a second pool called the Water Quality Infrastructure Intermunicipal Grant Pool. It's also administered by the EFC. These are outright grants. They have the same submittal requirements. The application window runs from July until September. So by the time that pool opens up, we will have the EFC application in to begin with. EFC administers this, so a lot of the criteria will be taken care of. It's just a function of getting the new application for the actual grant into the people at the Environmental Facilities Corporation. They're screened and scored in conjunction with the people at the New York State Department of Health. So DOH works in conjunction with EFC to score projects and then rank whether or not you get a grant or a low interest loan. Talk next for Rich about water quality samples.
So at the request of the residents, we were asked to collect some water quality samples, and so we did that. We did about once a week, 5 weeks, Tom? Amanda? We did about 5 different samples. So we collected at the treatment plant, at hydrants, at Kelly Avery, Lakeview, Tower Lindy, and Kelly Ridge. They were sampled for Putnam County DOH criteria, and which includes iron, lead, manganese, E. coli, total coli, coliforms, sorry, turbidity, and chlorine residual. So that's iron, lead, manganese, E. coli, total coli, turbidity, and chlorine. As you can imagine, the iron ranges, which people have been experiences, are higher than anticipated. Minimum was 0.2, some 32.9. Leads, we were fine within the state criteria. Manganese, we were below the state criteria. Well, we had a little exceedance at 1.82. That's a mineral that's in the water. We were absent of any coliform, which is a good thing, and chlorine residuals were good. That's what they're supposed to be at. So those are they can be made available if people would like them. So we talked about some time frames. Oops. We're going quickly with our time frames. So we've identified the various pieces here, right? We talked about pipe replacement, the meter project, distribution system tank upgrades, the report for the wastewater, for the water treatment plant, and the water treatment plant itself, right? Pipe replacement, meter, right? So that pipe replacement, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be finished in 2019. The meter project is in process. It has started. It started in the smaller districts further east from Carmel Water District 2. Distribution system tanks, if all things are being voted on and we're moving forward and the board moves forward with it, we're going with the lines, the distribution lines this evening. I think there's a public hearing for that to open up the, the public hearing for the bonding, right? And then, if they want to move forward with the rehabilitation of the tanks, that would be 2020 to 2024. We expect the report for the water treatment plant to be completed in fall of 19. And if we move forward with the water treatment plant, depending on really everything else that really leads up to it, we look to see that at 2022 to 2025. So this doesn't really dovetail into what Mary Ann just talked about, because she said, hey, if this was done immediately, and I think that's kind of what Councilman Barilli was talking about, is, hey, what is it going to look like when everything's coming off, when everything's coming on? That's something we'll develop those numbers and get them out to you. But right now, we're looking these proximate dates right now, 2022 to 2025, to start with the plan. The bonding, right, would be in place for the pipe replacement, which is the one that's completing this year. Next year, potential bonding for the meter project would be 2021. distribution tanks and system and tank upgrades would be bonding in 2025. And then the water treatment plant would be 2026 to 2030, depending again when the work is completed and when we pay our last bill and give the, what do we get back at the end? Thank you, retainage. That's why we're here. So we give back the retainage and then the bonding occurs after that, so a year after the retainage. So that, in essence, is the broad stroke overview of Water District 2. I know you probably have a lot of questions, so that's what we're up here for. So I don't know how, I'll leave it up to the supervisor to dictate how questions will be asked, who's going to ask them. I think there was a list up there. So.
Tell the people that just walked in through the door and seats
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there's still a lot of open seats on both sides of the room. If anybody that's standing would like to have a seat, take one of these seats over here to the left or off to the right if you feel more comfortable sitting down as opposed to standing. So before we get started with the questions from the audience, I'm going to turn to the state representatives and the federal representatives that are here tonight. Guys, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us here. But as you can see from what you're hearing tonight from the controller's presentation, these are going to be extremely costly and expensive projects that we're going to be undertaking here in the town of Carmel. We're going to need your help. We're going to need Congressman Maloney to get involved and help us out. We're going to need Senator Harkin to help us with these projects, and Assemblyman Byrd as well. So whatever grant funding is out there, we will be applying for it, as John Fulchetti mentioned. So we're hoping that there is funding that's going to come through to help us and help the taxpayers with these projects. They're extremely costly, and we're going to need your help. So whatever you can do to help us, push those grants forward, and perhaps, Senator Harkin and Congressman Maloney, Senator Gillibrand, his office will be involved with this as well. So if we put those in the list of priorities for your elected officials' positions, you should treat this as a priority. This is number one, okay? I don't want to put you guys on the spot tonight, but I am. All right. So thank you. So you can deliver that message back to your respective elected officials that we need help in Carmel for funding these projects. Thank you. Okay. All right. If you have any questions after tonight, you can always call my office and we'll help you out with that. All right. But get ready. All right. So at this time, I believe we're ready to open up the floor to a public comment from the residents. So if anybody would like to come up, if you have any specific questions or comments that you'd like to make, we're going to take those now. So maybe we should go row by row. It might be easier that way if we do that. So, Carl, did you have something?
Yeah, you want to start with me?
Yeah, let's start with you, Carl.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Fold this up? No, we're good.
No, it's good.
As you know, I'm a resident of the district for probably close to 50 years. And during those 50 years, we paid a lot of taxes and different things. Sewers for many years, and we didn't have sewers, probably 20 years that I can remember. Upgrading the sewer plant was $30 million. There's a lot going on here, and I appreciate that you're looking at it and planning for the future. But I'm hoping that you maybe slow down a little bit and just prioritize it. We're looking at a filtration plant that's running at about 80% now, that's providing good quality water. It's working. It may not be the best state of the art, and we could always do better, but maybe right at this moment, that's not the thing that we should conquer. Pipes are an obvious issue. We have to do something with that. Meters, I question also, is it really a priority? I would just say that we're probably going to have a couple of new board members next year to maybe slow down on some of the decisions that you're making here. Just consider, there's a lot going on in this area. And then in light of all these things going on, they also upzoned to 3 acres. So people that were paying their dues for all these years, now you have a 3-acre lot. Do you really need sewer and water? So there's a lot of bangs going on. I would just recommend or suggest that you take your time, look at this carefully. Perhaps if it's done on a lower scale, breaking it up, you'll have more people bidding on it. So there's a lot of moving parts that really have to be looked at. So that's just my thought. And I know you have a lot on your plate, and I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna start, we're gonna go from left to right, my left to your right. First row over here, does anybody have any questions? Okay, how about on this side of the room, first row, any questions, Frank? Sure.
You can go right
Dominic,
ahead.
does that mic?
Yeah, the mic's
that's-
on.
Okay. Frank, just let everybody know who you are.
Yeah, hi, I'm Frank Chianca. I have been a resident of Carmel 50 years this coming May. So, I also represent the Hamlet of Carmel Civic Association. And I appreciate the effort that this town board has put in. We've been coming to meetings for over a year now, discussing this project. It's not going to be easy. It hasn't been easy. It's not going to be easy going forward. But certain things have to be done. And I just wanted to go over my notes. I agree with Carl. The current plant is providing quality water. If the concern here is future demands on that plant, I would ask the question, if we get new development in the way of large projects, do we intend to charge developers to get into the system the way, when a real estate developer builds homes, sometimes he'll pay extra money. Sometimes they'll pay extra money in for recreation. If you're thinking going forward, let's say to the year 2050, and we have a development that's going to really create excessive demands on our, let's say, our water treatment plant, maybe that developer has to come up with some of the money to upgrade that plant so it's not borne by the residents. So 2050 is a long way off, and I would like to be here to speak again in 2050. Okay. I picked up on the fact that we will be, our taxes will be going down in the sewer district once those bonds are complete. Is that the bond for the 30-year bond that we've been paying, or is that the sewer?
Exactly when it started.
Okay, so the Hamlet of Carmel Civic Association came about as a result of the sewer district proposal in the early 90s because people were concerned about paying $30 million at that time. So here we go again. That $30 million is paid for, and now we got another 30 coming up. I would have to say, go slow. You don't have to spend all of this at once. If the treatment plant is working, if the water towers are functional, yes, repair them, rehab them if you need to. But the questions that have been coming to us in the Civic Association is it true that we could see $1,500 or $2,000 a year increase in our taxes, and if that's the case, we can't afford to live here. So you have to keep that in mind.
We can see that.
If so, I guess my point was if how much of that is going to be offset by savings for bonds that are coming to fruition, and if that's substantial, we should know that, and it might be easier to swallow this pill. I guess the other alternative to replacing this water treatment plant, I know at prior meetings, some people spoke about building a new plant down at the lower end of the system to service the hospital and Vista on the Lake and draw water from the reservoir down there. If that's feasible, and it's a lower cost alternative than replacing our plant here in town, here in, you know, in this end of town. I don't know, has that been looked into, and if so, is it a possibility? I guess what we're saying as a group is that we know a lot of this work needs to be done, some like tomorrow, and some maybe like 5 years from now. Let's not pick up the tab for everything tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Okay, anybody? Yes, sir. Come on.
Hi, Rob Nelson, resident of the district. I have a lot of questions, but I'm just gonna ask two, if that's okay.
Sure.
And I'll ask them both, and you can answer them how you like. I was trying to do some research and review some documents on previous questions to the council and answers that were provided. And one of the big ones is, why don't the residents get to vote on these things? Why isn't there a referendum? And I think the answer was that it's a safety and health concern, and as a result, there doesn't need to be a vote. My first question was, is all of this under that umbrella, and who determines that? Because when we're talking about things like a plant that we're investing in for future potential capacity based on growth, that doesn't sound like a current safety and health issue that doesn't require a referendum. So that was the first question. And the second, and I'll stop and you guys can answer them. The second question is, I know after this meeting there's going to be another meeting and you're going to vote on whether to bond the amount. But I'm glad Mr. Maloney and Harkham's representatives are here today, because I've been in correspondence with their offices and county executives, and my understanding is that there's been no applications for grants or anything like that. That's closed. It opens in July. How can we bond that and have estimates for that when we don't even know what kind of aid we're going to receive? How does that work if we ask for a number and it needs to be lower, et cetera?
Okay, Greg, John.
Yeah, I'll answer the first one. With respect to a referendum, I think that your question kind of referred to that. The actual construction or the rehabilitation of the lines, which is what is happening here tonight on the borrowing end. The project itself is not subject to any referendum. The board can, at its discretion, put virtually anything to a referendum on the ballot. It hasn't done it in this circumstance. But with respect to the borrowing, if and when a borrowing authorization is passed, there is a period called an estoppel period. And after that resolution is passed, a notice of its passage is published, and then there's a 20-day period after that where anybody who's aggrieved by it can seek court intervention to try and put aside the authorized borrowing, which in effect would stall the project one way or the other. The project's not going to be done without the borrowing, or grant funding, whatever is we're eligible for and we ultimately acquire. But as a project requiring a referendum in and of itself, it doesn't.
So just as a follow-up, that's our only recourse essentially if we want to disagree with that, is to take formal legal action once it's been done.
That estoppel period is provided for anybody who's aggrieved by the authorized borrowing to take legal action. That's why it's there. That's why if the board authorizes it, when they authorize it tonight or at any point, they can't go ahead and contract the next day. There's that period of time for anybody who has an interest in it, interested party, to actually take it and seek it if they wish. All right, and you have a question about the grants, which I think is a reimbursable question.
So as I said during the bonding slide, or during the grant slide, the requirement at both agencies for either the EFC low interest loan or grant or the WIA grant is that you provide an engineering report, which just got completed in February, and then you have to go through the state environmental quality review process, and you have to have the bond resolution. So all of that stuff is coming to fulfillment as part of this process now. So as soon as the board adopts the bond resolution, the secret finding here, I think, is going to be a type 2 on the pipe because it's a rehab job. And then so the report, the secret compliance, and the bond resolution all come to fruition now, and those are the minimum criteria for making the filing. So we'll file with EFC immediately to get on their project list, and then as soon as the grant window opens in July, because we're just on just on the phone with WIA a couple of weeks ago. They won't take it before July, so their window for acceptance is July through September of the applications. So basically, by the time you go to work, you'll have some idea of what the grants are or low interest loans, and how does the low interest loan compare with the town's bonding capacity and our capacity to borrow money at whatever the market rate is.
And it sounded like we don't bond until the costs are incurred, essentially. So if we do get aid and the costs are lower than what's been projected, that's what will ultimately.
Right, so any aid that you get will get applied to the job, to the project. So EFC doesn't, when they give you a grant or a low interest loan, the accounting that goes along with that is painful. There's no, you can't take it and move the money someplace else. It goes specifically to that project.
Thank you.
Just with the board authorizing the bond tonight, or the borrowing resolution tonight of 13.3, that does not mean that we would be bonding out 13.3. We would look at the grants that we would, apply for, whatever we received, whether it be EFC funding or regular bonding, and we would bond out the final cost after the grants are.
And that's just for the distribution facility tonight.
Tonight is a
The
distribution
plans hasn't
facility.
been decided yet.
Yes,
Okay.
and they're also, the 13.3 is the high, the range in the report that John discussed in February. It was, I think it was 11 point something to 13.3. So we are authorizing the bonding for 13.3, but that again is the high. So we would not bond that out, obviously, until the project is done, and we would reduce any grant funding that we would to receive.
Thank you.
Okay?
Okay, anybody else in the front row? On this side, yes, sir.
Chandra Cosma, Carmel, live over on Kelly Ridge. One of the gentlemen, I think it was actually Ron, he pulled some questions together from the residents of the Carmel Water District number 2. I believe that was sent over to the town board. Will those questions be answered tonight after everyone else?
They were all answered.
Oh, they were?
Yeah, they're on the website currently. On the website, I think Mr. Galvin, is he here?
They are posted? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I guess I've been working too much. Question on, as far as the plant is concerned, what's the normal life expectancy of the plant?
John?
Just say, the design life is 30 years.
Normally
So
30.
it's normally that for plant and equipment. Equipment lasts less.
Okay, no, it gives me a feel, because it's at, 43 now or so? So it's getting aged. Sorry, I'm just going through. With the hydrants, since I didn't get to see the answers to those questions, were you able to talk to the fire chief about the amount of pressure and water flow that we should be receiving out of the hydrant versus what's currently there, to ensure that when we do this, it's going to be able to be used to put fires out?
Right, so there's two things. One is that the town engineer's office will coordinate with the fire chief. The second piece of that we're going to initiate is an ISO, an insurance services office, right? That's who sets the insurance rates on the basis of fire flow and pressure at hydrants around the district. So the fire departments, in my experience, typically rely a lot on what ISO has to say in terms of the ratings. So when we line the mains, basically we're going to end up with new pipe, okay, on the inside. So the hydraulics inside of that, the flow conditions inside of that are like new mains.
And as these mains are being rehabilitated, will the hydrants also be reviewed? Because I'm assuming there's going to be some buildup in the pipe going to the hydrant.
Right. The hydrants, so on the lining process,
yep,
we enter the mains, the existing mains, about every 500 feet, either at a valve or every 500 feet. And we replace, so you get all new valves and all new hydrants. All 100% of the hydrants, any place where we're looking to reline mains, will be replaced.
Perfect. Just don't make them yellow, please.
Well, that they would be, when we do the ISO, I've reached out to the gentleman from the ISO. We're setting up a meeting to talk about what information he needs, and we're gonna move forward with that. So that question that you had is somewhat addressed. We're moving forward with it. So there's no immediate answer. I can't tell you, yes, it was done, but we're looking to move forward with that.
It just makes sense to do it all at once.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah,
exactly.
I get it. The alternate supply line for Putnam Hospital, what's the chances of getting the hospital to pay for that one? Just wondering. Anyone?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, so that recommendation was mine. When we went to take a coupon out of the main in Stoneleigh Avenue, we couldn't do it without shutting the flow off to Putnam Hospital. And that's a really, I didn't want to take that risk, okay? So that a problem for us during the investigation phase translates to a problem for the hospital if the main breaks, because the net effect is the same. So that's the basis for that recommendation. How the payment, they're ratepayers in the district, so I think they get the benefit, but whatever.
So I think the question was with respect to the hospital, and if the town board elects to have the redundant main along Stoneleigh Avenue that would terminate at Putnam Hospital constructed, could the hospital be responsible to pay for that? Was that generally the question?
Yeah.
Okay, fair question. Unless they would volunteer to do that, no. What happens is they're a ratepayer in the district. They pay capital and O&M, and their calculation, operation and maintenance, and capital costs for the system. So their calculation is based on our formula, the town code formula, which is based on amount of frontage and acreage of the property. So they are a ratepayer in the district. So, right? Annually? Capital O&M is $110,000 and this is for water to an extension. Okay, so that's basically the number that they pay every year in taxes. And what happens is, and it's a fair question, and I'll just say that the logic is that there's other people in the district who either don't have issues with their water or they are at remote reaches of the district, and they might not be. There's 50 miles of pipe. The rehabilitation is for 10. Okay, for people who obviously have complaints about their water and their water is affected. The other 40 miles, owners of the people who use the other 40 miles of pipe are going to fund this because they're within the district boundaries, and they're going to pay their proportionate share of capital and O&M for the projects. So unless somehow the hospital or any ratepayer voluntarily came forth and said we would like to pay for this, then the town has no way of enforcing that, saying we're going to build this and it's got to be yours. They're in the district and they pay the rate. But it's been asked leading up to it any number of times. It's a reasonable question, I understand. Okay.
Just with the, if we were to rehabilitate the water tanks, right? Reline the epoxy on the inside and all that, how long are those tanks down for? To assume, we're going to be getting some sort of water trucks or tankers with waters to provide that, and it's not going to be a day.
No, the cure for the epoxy is about 5 to 7 days. Okay, so that set of projects around the district, because you have all 3 tanks, right? We're going to have to cycle through and then make arrangements for backup water supply in the event that we have an issue. So it's not, Rich talked earlier about our average consumption is 800,000 gallons a day, and we have our max days at 1.6 million gallons a day. That's not the time of year when we're going to do the tank rehab. We're going to do it during the low flow season of the year, so that our standby requirements are lower and more manageable.
Yeah, but I'm assuming it'll be spring or fall, right? Because
Fall.
probably wouldn't be cured in, right?
Correct.
So it'll probably be about 2 weeks, right? By the time you
Per
prep
tank.
it, do
Per
everything.
tank.
Yeah.
Per tank.
Okay, so, sorry, I wrote some notes down. Can I ask one favor, if I may? I'll look online at the questions, and after everyone else is done, if I still have a question, can I come back up at the end?
Sure
Is that
can.
fair enough?
Yes.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, here.
Sir, here,
Thank you.
Second row on this side. Anybody in the second row, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Judy Mira, Carmel. This is all very new to me, and I'm a newbie living in Carmel, but I do have some questions. How often are these checked? Are they flushed? Are the pipes flushed? It would seem that the pipes are the priority because of the corrosion in so many of them. So I know this was an issue with dirty water a couple of years ago. People were emailing about it and sending in samples and showing pictures of samples. So why is this addressed all at one time as opposed to not having been? I mean, obviously there's no one in this room that waited till they were 30 years old to go to a doctor to see if they were physically fit. So how often are these lines, are everything?
So the lines are flushed twice a year in the system. But as you can see with some of the pipes, there's tuberculation happening in the unlined sections of them. We don't drop cameras in these lines. They're not, normally do that. So you're asking how often do they get inspected? They don't get inspected that way, similar to what, you would do. We're realizing, not realizing, but we know by water complaints, when there is brown water, we went out and investigated it. When we were doing some of these coupons or when there were water main breaks, we've been seeing that tuberculation in there, and that's how we've been moving forward with this type of thought process. Right. So John just mentioned to me what tuberculation is. Similar to you going to a doctor, right? You don't wait 30 years, but if you have hardened arteries, consider a pipe like a hardened artery. When you have this growth that's in there, it doesn't flush out. It stays in the pipe. It's not like it's dirt. Like the bottom of the tanks have dirt in it, right? Or sediment, sorry, let me repeat that. So it has sediment. That can be sucked out with a vacuum. The tuberculation, it has to be rotor-rooted out, if you want to call it this. That's what my father used to call it when somebody had hard work, right? You got rotor-rooted. So, so that's what it is. Did I answer your question?
Okay, yeah. I don't know if this one is out of left field, but have there ever been any plans or any opportunities to renegotiate with New York City about Lake Oneida?
Greg will answer that question.
Where's Greg?
Greg's not here right now. I don't know where he is. So. The short answer is yes, it's ongoing, it's all on the legal end of things, so I'm not at liberty to discuss it, I'm not part of those negotiations. Some of the town board members are not even part of that negotiations, and I'm not making light of it, so it's really a legal issue.
Yes, we've commenced litigation.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes, but we really can't speak too much about that because it involves litigation, but we are.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's good to hear.
Moving forward with that.
That's good to hear. My last question is, what would be the savings in interest if we paid it at the higher rate at 15 years as opposed to 30 years?
Would you refer to Mary Ann?
Big savings.
You're saying if we were to pay bonds it at 15 years
Right.
versus 30 years?
Right.
Yeah. I do have that spreadsheet. I mean, if we were to bond, say, the treatment plant at 30 years, or at 15 years, we would pay in total $3,598,000. Okay, if we were to bond that out in 30 years, we would pay $9 million in interest.
Good question.
Okay, so, I mean, 15 years could be a financial burden for taxpayers, so I would look, obviously when these projects are done and we're ready to bond them out, then I would probably look at, like a 15 to 20 year, maybe an 18-year bond. I think going 30 years would be, the interest is crazy,
Yeah. Mary Ann,
So-
just a quick number on that. You're looking at about a $2,500 difference on that average of 407, and all I did was I took what the annual cost would be at 15, multiplied by 15, annual cost at 30, multiplied by 30. So at 15, you're at $87.75 for your total cost.
and at 30 years, you'd be at $11,250. So you're looking at $2,475 difference if you were to bond it out for twice as long. So it's a substantial percentage higher that you'd be paying. Yes, it would be easier to swallow each year, but that won't include possible alternate water supply, anything that happens in the future. So it's definitely a much higher number in total, but I think this is where the hardest decision is going to be. Is we know we're going to have to do stuff. How long are we going to bond it? It's going to be very difficult to
Okay,
figure
so
out.
I just want to clarify if I heard correctly, and that's my last. I appreciate, and I'm sure we all appreciate these meetings and have a chance to voice our opinions and concerns. Is it, this is not a voting bond, this is your decision. You make the decision. So if after all these meetings and you hear all the concerns and everything else, and then the board ultimately makes
That's
the
correct.
decision.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Barry Corsi, Carmel. I have a question with your water samples here. You sit there, you tell us that the present facility that's there is running at 80% capacity, but it doesn't tell us what the sample is before it comes through the facility, what it is after the facility, and then obviously it would be separate at each location. That's where I'm having a problem, because right now we have a facility with basket strainers, with ponds. We don't know what we're getting every place. Are we getting a UV lighting system? Are we getting another basket tray with ponds? What exactly does this facility need? And what's the need for it? So
You're
that we
talking
don't
the
have
future
that.
facility?
Yes.
So that has,
Compared to the old one.
right, so that's still a work in progress. We'll have a better feel for that information
How do
in
we-
September.
How do we know it's 13 million at the present rate then?
No, 13 million, that 13 million is for the distribution system that's being voted on tonight. We gave estimates for the plant at 12 million, 15 and 18
Okay, and what's
million.
that detail in that?
It's just their gross estimates on, if you use
Well, it
it.
changes a lot if you're doing a basket strainer or a
Oh,
UV.
of course it does.
I mean, you're
No,
talking millions.
Of course it does. Yeah, I full-heartedly agree. That's why they use as estimates. But if you use if you're using at about a 1.5 million gallon per day plant, which would be for the future, at $10–15 per gallon without any land costs, with any other work, you're at those numbers right there. So it was more of a order of magnitude to get an estimate of it. It could be less. It obviously could be a lot less, and that would be the goal, right?
It could also be a lot more, because depending on what you actually put in that facility, if something breaks, it could cost more to replace those parts. So there's also a continuing cost to all of this also.
Right, there's a maintenance cost to it, there's everything that's associated with replacement costs, the whole thing.
Which brings me now to the valve.
The valve,
Now, you
yes.
say that we need to change these valves because they obviously wasn't exercised, about the maintenance on them, aging, whatever it might be. Now, obviously, we need valves to shut down lines, to isolate systems, to work on other things. What says we change these valves that obviously weren't exercised or prevent the maintenance and put brand new ones in, and we're back in the same situation in 5 years? Who actually does the prevent the maintenance or exercises these valves on a normal basis? Because that's why these valves aren't working right now.
Right, so the updated contract that we have with Inframark has a valve exercising program, and they're identifying those
But it
areas.
didn't before?
It did not before. Well, then, we only renegotiated that contract 2 years ago, so, again, we're moving forward here, we're trying to get things done, so these are the things we're just trying to make it work better.
The replacement of the piping, what are we replacing with? I mean, why are we using all different types of piping depending on area?
No, so the pipe replacement project is concluding. That's the installation of new PVC water mains in place of the existing old cast or ductile unlined iron. All of the rehabilitation in the map, put that on one, put that map up. That's the yellow one, right? Yeah. So each of the neighborhoods that you see there highlighted in yellow is where we're recommending relining the existing pipes rather than digging everything up. That's what I just said, we go back in every 500 feet, new valve.
You send like a little piggy in and it sprays up concrete onto the side.
Exactly. Ream it, right, then respray it. So it's not new pipe, and we're not changing out the pipe. What we're doing is cleaning the existing one and lining.
What happens if some of that old iron pipe is just gone? Okay, you spray it with the concrete blend, simple, that's pretty much what it is, that's what you're lining it with. What happens when that breaks? How do we rectify it at that point then?
The evaluation that we did over the course of 2018 was designed to tell us whether or not the pipe would be adequate to withstand the reaming operation, specifically to answer that question.
But that's not 100% until you can see it all. I mean, all you're pretty much,
That's right.
Doing x-rays, you're doing,
That's right, it's an assessment of the system, and most of those pipes are similar aged. Consequently, we have to draw the conclusion that what we pull out of the ground is representative of what's everywhere else in the ground. Based on the tuberculation that we saw, that's uniform.
and it would be more cost effective to go this way, you think, at this point?
By far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone in the second row on this side? Second row on this side, any questions, comments? You like to drink? Yes.
Good evening, Charles Johnson, Water District member. Question, so we want to rebuild the plant currently. What's its life expectancy now? So you said 30 years, it's over 30 years. You've obviously been doing preventive maintenance, replacing things. If we didn't do anything right now with replacing the plant, how long would it last?
It's indeterminate, right? I mean, it'll keep going as long as we keep putting Band-Aids on it. And that's essentially what we're doing.
Okay.
So we, the pieces that wear out in that plant, the building is fine, assuming that we could fit new units in there, that'd be okay. But basically what's worn out is the pumps, right? That's a routine replacement, they would be anyway. But our DE, or diatomaceous earth replacement rate is very, very, very high.
Replacing the actual dirt in the building with the backwash.
The dirt.
So what is the cost now per year with these Band-Aids on the system?
Cost now for repair?
Yeah.
What we're paying now for repair?
We're Band-Aiding the current plant right now.
Well,
What
the
does
whole
that cost?
system.
No, just the water treatment plant. Do you have that number, man? I don't know that number off the top of my head. It's something we can certainly get back to you. We didn't.
About the annual budget?
No, what we're paying in repairs at the plant itself.
No, we'd have to run like a line of a vendor history or,
Okay.
It's something we can provide. We don't have that number right now. It's a good
Okay.
question.
So the plant can be completely viable. We don't know what we're putting in. It's not like a car where if you're putting in more than it's worth, it's obviously not worth doing it, you get a new car. However, we're not sure what we're actually paying per year to keep this plant going. It actually still might be a viable plant to keep. Now, you guys wanted to upgrade for 2050, but you said the life expectancy of the plant is 30 years. So 2020, 2022, we replace the plant. 2050, we need a new one anyways. So it seems a little odd that I'm paying for something that has to be replaced for 2050, but also our permit for New York City is 1 million gallons. You want to pull 1.5 million, and you were saying that's still, we can only pull 800,000 to 1 million out of Lake Oneida to keep it safe, correct? That was in the slide?
Right.
So
That's
we
the safe
can't-
yield, correct.
We can't pull more out of that. So our current plan is pulling 800,000, can go up to 1.6 million. You want to pull a plant that would have the ability to pull up to 2.5 million for the need of 2050, correct?
No, that's not what we would design the plan for. That's what the numbers came back at with the study. It's a good observation, but it's not what we would design the plan for. So the demand, the maximum day demand would be, at least according to, there was a range of low, medium, and high within that report. The high was 2.15 MGD, where the low was 1.3. So
For 2050.
For 2050, right.
But we can't get that from our current source of Lake Oneida. Would not be practical or
Right.
safe.
Right, correct.
And we're obviously not building a pipe from Lake Mayapack all the way over to Carmel District 2. That doesn't seem feasible. So we would use another New York City reservoir,
That is indeterminate if it's not, anything is engineerable and feasible, right? So
Oh,
saying
but
it's not feasible,
money.
right, but paying New York City forever
Yeah, but
also
he's
is gonna
paying
cost
New
you
York
money.
City too.
Yeah.
Remember, so you can pull more from the West Branch and have the water supply you need in Glenida, right? That's a potential, right? You can pump from West Branch into Glenida, supplement Glenida, keep the plant, make it as big as you want it at that point in time, based on how much you can pump from West Branch, right? But you're paying New York City DEP for the use of that water.
Well, we have to pay someone. We don't have wells, so you have to pay for water from somewhere.
No.
New York City doesn't allow motorboats or any of those other activities. If you were to pull from Lake Mayapack, are you guys gonna close that to any type of motorboats or any of that?
No.
So
No, that wouldn't happen. But
that's
it's
not
an existing
very-
it's an existing water supply for a bunch of residents in Lake Mahopac area, for 4 water districts. It's in the questions and answers that we provided, so it is an existing water source. And actually, people pull directly out of Lake Mahopac and drink from it. So the New York City DEP, the water board, the way they give the rates to us, they allot users based on what New York City users would use at the back end, right? When we go over that allotment, which we go over pretty much every year, we pay an additional fee to New York City DEP. So they're saying, hey, you got a certain amount of connections, certain amount of residents, this is what we would do for New York City, this is what we're allowing you this at this rate. We go over that, meaning Water District 2 goes over that all the time, every year pretty much. And we're paying not only the base rate, we're paying like, it's an excess rate, but what is it? 2 or 3, it's a factor of 3, right?
What does that mean? Like times 3?
Yeah, so if you're paying $1 a gallon, anything over, you're paying 3, but it's not $1, it's more than that, so.
So what is essential versus what is necessary? What's a want, what's a need? So the tanks are over 50 years old. You guys tested them. They're still good. They're structurally sound. Do they need to be lined, or is that just a recommendation?
Based on the reports, and again, they'll be posted up on the webpage tomorrow, they recommended a more of a critical path to do the epoxying and lining of it, of these tanks.
And what was the rationale behind that? So 50 years they haven't had it, they haven't had mixers, but now they need it. So what's the rationale that they need it now?
Well,
They haven't been touched in 50 years.
because they weren't looked at. 50 years ago, it was a different system, it was a different world, right? So now and the paint was new, right? So now it needs to be done, right? So these are all great questions, but they haven't been looked at in 50 years. It needs to be addressed. So it's either that or you're buying a new tank, which,
What's the current expectancy of the tanks if we don't do anything to them?
I don't know that.
Another 50 years? I mean,
No, probably not another 50. Probably less than 10. That's what John's saying, less than 10. Okay.
I think if
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks. Second row, on this side, yes, sir?
Yeah, it's okay, I can talk from here if that's okay. I heard you Jeff Oceans, Carmel, I've been here 6 years. I heard you mention that a pipe kept cracking because it wasn't leveled right. So is there any way we can sue that company, get back money from them for their incompetence? Or is it just gonna cost more in legal fees? I mean, if they keep, I don't wanna curse, but they keep effing up, so it's like,
That line has been there since I don't know when. It connects Houston Road to Stoneleigh Avenue on the south side of Kelly Road in the woods.
okay.
I don't know how it got there. Lou, go ahead.
Yeah, all right. My name is Lou Bowles, and unfortunately, I did run the water district for about 15 years, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Lou,
And
Lou,
that line,
Lou, can you go to the podium and speak to the mic, thanks?
that line that John is talking about was put in actually when Kelly Ridge was developed way back when, and it's actually a transite pipe, and that was put in actually by Dr. Dickerson, who owned the property up there that developed that whole area. And that was all transite and cast iron up there afterwards, and that's basically how he got it. He ran it over off of, up there through where what is now the retreat area, ran ran the line down. They ran it down Stoneleigh Avenue a little bit and then cut right through the woods and brought it out. That's how that line got there.
Thanks, Lou.
Okay. Okay, did that answer your question, sir? Did that answer your question?
I guess, but you know, there's really no way we're getting any,
Compensation.
No.
compensation.
Say no.
Okay.
All right,
But
anybody,
good to watch.
anybody else in the second row on this side? Anyone else? Second row?
Hi, everybody. Jean Hopper, Mahopac. A lot of questions that I had have been asked and answered, so I appreciate that. I did want to touch briefly on the repairs that have been going on in these, let's say with Carmel District 2. I think that's an important figure that people should be aware of, how much that's costing for the patch jobs, for the repairs, for the emergency repairs, water that's turned off for the hassle that causes taxpayers. So that's something that we should really look into. And I'm surprised we don't have a number on it. Do we have a number on it?
Well, I do have an,
The average for the last 5 years has been $697,018. Average is about $139,000 a month, $2,680 a week. I brought that up a year ago when we talked about the $2.2 million repair.
Right.
It's basically $55 a year that every homeowner that's hooked up to this system pays for nothing.
Just for the repairs, for the emergency repairs and whatever. Talking about tanks, people ask good questions and answered a lot of mine, but I have another one. What would the cost of replacing the tanks be? Do we have an idea of how much that would be versus the relining? I mean, that was what, $400,000?
Yeah, so I'm trying to get it up real quick. So we did some research. There are 3 different types of tanks we can look at. You look at a glass fused steel tank. The tank itself is about $370,000. That's just to get it off the back, from the shop to the back of the truck to deliver it.
Right.
For a concrete tank, it's about $715,000, and for a steel tank, $552,000. So that is for a new 300,000 gallon tank. If you want to estimate, we pretty much tripled that estimate to have it installed after you have to pay the prevailing wage. So the $370,000 tank is probably about $1.2 million.
Wow, that's a big jump from the cost to have.
Well, so that's just to have a tank. That's that's buying the microphone, not buying the whole sound system.
And there's no play in those prices. There's nothing.
Well, these were estimates on it. We didn't go out to bid on any of these things. So I mean, when you go out to bid, you'd be able to get them.
Because you're saying that you're getting these are relined or sandblasting for $370,000, and a new one costs about $370,000 uninstalled. I understand that.
Got it.
That's that's a big difference, and I'm wondering, besides the tank itself, the integrity of the tank, what about the mounting and what that's on? I mean, how stable are those right now too?
So that's why so right now the tanks we have are installed, right? They're fine on the integrity of the foundations that they're on.
They are.
Right? That was part of the investigation. Those would be in those reports. But what you have here, that would have to have a new foundation put in, a whole new, all the different work that's needed to get to the point to be able to install it and make sure it's going to last for the 50 years.
And that triples the price. Wow. I think we talked about life expectancy of the pipe relining. Did we ever have that answered?
30 years. And it's the same as the design life of the new pipe.
Thanks, that's it. Thank you.
Anybody else in the second row on this side, on the right side? All right, we're going to go over here to the third row. On the third row, are you in it? All right, sir. Yes, Nicole.
My name's Charlie Cole. On Main Street in Carmel. I want to know what your plan is right now. put out all this information tonight for everybody, and, you know, where do you go from here? Is there gonna be another meeting? You got a plan in the future? Is this the only plan that you're gonna go with? Or has this plan got some kind of wiggle room to it? Because, these numbers, you know, I'm not gonna be able to pay this, you know, you say it's almost $900 and some per household for a year. I'm not gonna be around 30 years. You know, I only got maybe another 15 years left. And, you know, I'm 80 years old now, so, you know, but I think this, I wanna know how much wiggle room there is here. You know, I'm not saying that you guys don't know your business. I know, you know what you're doing, but you gotta get the numbers down. Do we have to go with this whole thing? Is this the Cadillac project, or is there a Chevy project? You know, put it that way.
Charlie, just to respond to your first question of concern that you had, it is our intention to keep the public, to keep you, the taxpayers and the residents, as informed. You may get tired of hearing from us, but it's our intention to meet again, have multiple meetings. We're not making any really critical decisions on this project this evening. There is the bonding for the $13 million for the distribution system that is on for tonight. That's something that we feel we need to move forward with pretty quickly and to apply for the grant funding as well. But we intend to keep you extremely informed and up to speed on what's going on. So we have to have more meetings, and we definitely will have more meetings up here in the Hamlet of Carmel to share information with you. So everybody knows exactly what we're doing, and you learn what the fiscal or financial impact is going to be for you down the road, you know, as the project moves forward. But again, we're hoping to get some grant funding from the good folks at the state and the federal level, but we will definitely, you know, notify the community and the public what's going on.
The way you put this out, can you do this in stages? Is this all going to be done
We could.
once? Or
No, we could do it in phases or stages. We can. That's something that we have talked about. So yeah, the answer is yes to that.
The least amount of money that the taxpayer has to put out is going to be the one that you should go with, because you know, the other thing. Let me go. You know that hotel project that was going to go in, and when that project went in, that Kamada proposed, and he was supposed to update that tank on Everett Road when that project was passed. That's the way I understood it. Has anyone looked into, you know, are we going to be getting any money from that?
Well, the hotel project is on a shelf somewhere. They're not going forward with that.
But when that project goes through, are you still going to be able to recoup some money?
The project's never gonna go through, and we're still waiting on $150,000 from the developer, and we're in court with them now on it.
Joel, did you hear that? That project's never going to go through.
Yeah, okay. And, yeah, if you could come up with a plan. I asked this, once before, maybe about a year ago. I said, what's the plan for doing this project? And I would think you would have to come up with a plan first. You know, how you gonna do it? Well, I'd say not first, but now that you've got an idea what everything is gonna cost, like if you could come up with a plan with the stages and how it could be done. And,
Yeah, Charlie, that's a very good question and comment. Yes, we know what the plan is. Everyone heard tonight what the issues are and what we're dealing with respect to water. So we do have that plan. It's just that you're right. Now moving forward, we have to make that determination What do we do from this point? Do we just do the distribution mains? Do we fix that problem and not do the water treatment plant? You know, and that may not be something that needs to be done right now, but in order of priority, the water distribution mains, we should start that soon. And the towers. So the water treatment plant, we put that on and made that part of the presentation tonight because we felt that that was also important, that the community and the residents of the Carmel Water District 2 users have, you know, educate themselves or, you know, become, you know, understand exactly where we're at with that and what needs to be done with that plant. Correct? It doesn't have, may not have to be done right now, but it may have to be changed out in the years to come. So it's important that you know about this now and you can plan for it going forward, that that's something that we need to do at some point. So
one question on the new plant. What kind of filter system is on that? You know, now you have a problem with the diminished earth getting through the screen and going out into the line. Now, does the new plant have a different type of filter? Or type of screening, whatever?
So the new plant would be a completely new plant, would not use diatomaceous earth, so you wouldn't have to worry about that passing through the filters anymore.
Yeah, I was curious about that, okay.
At least that's what the intention would be.
Because now, there are quite a few people that have problems, you know, with the valves in their house, and the faucets and that, plugging up with the diminished earth, and so I don't have a problem anymore. I spent some money where I put a big filter on my house, and I had to replace several of my valves that got caked up with all this white sediment, and so I'm in pretty good shape now. But, you know, it seems a shame to do all this, what you guys have to do here. With my grandfather, he had a 2-inch galvanized pipe that went across Route 6 into Lake Lenida, and that's how he got his water.
yes, John.
John Butler from CWD 2, as we call it, up in the Kelly Ridge area. First thing I'd like to say is, several weeks, months ago, we were talking at several town board meetings as to how important it was for people to show up. Well, thank you very much. I said at that time I didn't know why it was necessary, because I thought that the sort of fiduciary responsibilities of the town board and their advisors and their employees was enough, but I guess we're here. Also, great questions so far. Just wanted to mention one thing for the folks that aren't aware of it, that there is a Facebook page that's been set up for the Carmel Water District number 2. It's got a lot of information on it already. It's got a lot of participants. I am not a Facebook person. I am not the person that put together, but if you go on Facebook and see residents of Carmel Water District number 2, you're going to see a lot of very, very good information on there. You know, generally speaking, you know, what we were talking about tonight, again, one of the great questions that was put forth by this young lady over here was the total cost of borrowings. The total cost of the project and the total cost of the borrowings on the various 15, 20, and 30-year options. Incredibly important. It reminded me of like when you're with the car salesman and they tell you, hey, your monthly payments going for this $20,000 car is going to be $300 a month. How fantastic is that? And then when you add it all up, you wind up realizing you just paid $40,000 for the $20,000 car. And that's really something that, you know, from looking at this from an overall perspective is incredibly important. But at the end of the day, talking number one, and there's a lot of things, and I'm going to be very, very quick here. The hospital line, I get it, it's emergency, we're all gonna, we rely on it, et cetera, but let's be realistic and pragmatic about it. This is a for-profit organization, okay? They're there to make money. They're there to save lives, but they're there to do so in the course of making money. I do not want to pay for the hospital. They can pay their own. I've had water pressure at my house up on the top of Kelly Ridge Road. That's probably been Kabul pressure, okay? And I would love for someone to build the line to my house and have someone else pay for it, but that's just not the reality of the world that we live in. We're talking about grants, getting money, grants. Great idea, love it. Who's gonna do it? There's a process, there's a mechanism. Who's gonna do it? It's a question. Who in the town is gonna do it?
Who's gonna make the grant application, is that the question, John?
Yeah.
Correct. And you feel confident about that?
Got about $40 million worth of successful grants under my belt, yeah.
From those state agencies, the same ones we're gonna be applying to? When were those projects?
We can go back, start in 1993.
Town of Carmel at any point?
No, not in 1993.
Has the town of Carmel ever gotten any grants from those agencies that we're aware of?
Got a low interest loan from EFC to do the sewage
Grant,
job.
not a loan.
No grants.
No grants, ever. What is, how do we feel about the possibility of getting those grants? What's the feasibility, what's the, sort of, what are the odds of getting the grants?
Let's ask these two over
Yeah.
here.
What to?
Well, state and federal representatives are here. They don't know.
For anyone that doesn't know me, Kevin Byrne, I'm the assemblyman for the area. I don't live in the hamlet of Carmel, live over in Mayapack now, but very connected to this area, having gone to this very school when this section of the building was not here. I did speak with the supervisor after the invitation to this meeting, and I did some research just to familiarize myself with what could be eligible potentially for this type of project, what type of grants could be available. John really cited everything that I familiarized myself with. There are certainly low interest loans that are available through the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, as well as the Water Infrastructure Improvement Program. Sometimes you hear myself or maybe my colleague in the Senate, Senator Harkin, talk about the Clean Water Infrastructure Bond funding. That's a statewide number. Well, that supports some of these types of projects, but it is something that is scored by the EFC that John mentioned, the Environmental Facilities Corporation. So there are other applicants. I mean, I don't think there's any guarantees with anything, but it's certainly, I will do my part as the representative for this area to be an advocate. I mean, this is certainly a local project decided by the town and the people in this room, right? But if you guys decide to go a certain route and apply, I'm certainly going to lend my support to any application.
There's certain moments in life when you feel, as you're getting older, that you feel really old. And I'm feeling right now, because you went to school with my youngest son, Brendan.
Oh,
and, and now I feel like basically I shouldn't even be here anymore. But thanks for your service, I appreciate it.
Hey, I'm Aiden with Senator Harkin's office. I do not have an answer for you, but if you'd like to follow up within our office, I'd be happy to help you find an answer, and then we're going to work very hard with the town of Carmel to try to get as much as we can to offset the cost. And Senator Harkin takes water quality very seriously. That was one of his major focal points when he was on the Westchester County Board of Legislature. So if you'd like to follow up with our office, like I said, I'll try to get as best an answer for you as I can.
Yeah, to be brutally frank, I don't want to follow up. I want these people to follow up.
I assure you we're going to be working very closely with them to go forward.
I'm with you. Technical question. Oh, sorry.
Just one more.
One more.
Sorry about
I mean, that's
I
okay.
apologize. We're camera blocked here.
So I'm actually here on behalf of my colleague Brenna Trumpetto. She is our Director of Grants and Outreach, so this is directly in her wheelhouse. She's been briefed on the situation at hand and is continuing to explore potential options as they arise, as different applications arise, has been working with the town, will continue to do so, whether it's through assistance any way we can, letters of support. So it's definitely something that we're aware of, without a doubt.
That's great. Appreciate it. Quick technical question on the storage tanks. presuming for the moment we proceed with the relining projects, which is exceedingly good news, given the cost of replacement. Warranties that go with that project?
You know, it's not in the report, we'd have to ask them that question, I don't know, we can get back to you on that.
Would it be safe to presume that if and when a contract is actually completed with them, that there will be a warranty feature with
It
it?
is definitely safe to assume that. Supervisor Schmidt did locate, the Lindy tank was relined in 2002. Epoxied on the inside and outside, so that kind of gives you an idea how the tank is, so.
Okay. So that's good.
Try
So-
that Lindy tank. That Lindy tank, as far as I know, was built in 1936.
And that's a 1936 tank. That's what we had in our original pit report, but we couldn't confirm it, so we said it was pre-1974 in our assessment tonight. But you have it from a water operator that it was built and installed in 1936.
I actually knew that it was a test.
Well, I didn't pass it, but he certainly did.
I'm sorry, that's okay.
I wasn't here, though.
There's a makeup next week, it'll be okay. I've spoken to your dad already. I'm gonna finish up quickly. Big, sort of a holistic type question. I've mentioned this and asked this question before in front of the town board. It's been said to me by several folks in the legal community and specific individuals as well, that the city of New York charging us for water from Lake Lanida is, as a matter of law, illegal. And I do not know whether that, as a legal concept or theory, is incorrect, correct, or somewhere in between. But the question I've asked in the past is to whether or not it's a good idea, or an idea at all, in a very nominal and minimal fashion, to research the potential that that may be correct. Is that the answer?
I have an answer for you.
Not the answer, an answer. I'm sorry.
No, I'll give you the answer.
I'm being obnoxious.
No,
I'm an insurance broker.
Never, never. What's happened here is that the New York City Water Board sets a rate for the consumption of water by the upstate communities. This is a fairly long answer, but I'm going to give you as much information as I can. And there are 75 of them. Carmel Water District number 2 is one of them. And those rates are set annually by the Water Board. And typically, the town of Carmel would go to those proceedings and file their objections to the rate, which would obviously be disregarded. And the city sets one uniform rate for all 75 upstate users.
Mm-hmm.
To give you some perspective, the 1992 rate was $103.72 per million gallons.
72 cents.
72.
Okay.
Okay, good. And in 2015, which is last year, they set a rate because there has been litigation underway since then. It was $1,573 per million gallons. So it went up 15 times over a 25-year span. Astronomical increase.
Yep.
So all of the objections that the town had made at that point had been obviously disregarded. And then in January of this year, we received notice from the Department of Environmental Conservation that there is a current water rate proceeding pending before the DEC, because when there is a dispute, the DEC is the venue where the rates get set. They look over the water board's determinations and they can set a rate.
Quick question. That's New York DEC, not New
The
York.
state.
Not New.
I'm going
not
to go
DC.
city and state, so we're clear.
Okay.
The
Got
state
it.
has the oversight on the rate.
Gotcha.
It is set by the city.
Yep.
6 communities were involved. City of White Plains, Town of Greenberg, City of Yonkers, Village of Scarsdale, and I shouldn't say communities, and 2 private water suppliers, Suez, who everybody knows from here, and Westchester Joint Water Works, all petitioned on the rates being unjust. The state then circulated to all of the other 69 communities, do you want to be a party to this proceeding, to contest the rates from 2015, 14, 15, and 16. The town board authorized my office to file a petition for the town of Carmel and Carmel Water 2 to seek party status, which was filed February 26th.
Mm-hmm.
We had a pre-hearing conference with the administrative law judge. Briefs have been submitted, and it is in what I would consider to be deep discovery mode. The paper that I've received from the city on it is Legion going back hundreds of years. I've produced things for the city regarding our position. But the very simple, and that's just a backdrop.
Sure.
The argument that the town is making has several prongs. The first is that the rates are unconscionable, which is what the other 6 communities and users are saying. It's just ridiculous rates, and the entitlement rate is one thing, and then the excess rate is just triple, and they just triple it, and that's it. That's one. The second is, that's a lake. It's not a reservoir. It's not part of the Croton, Delaware, or Catskill Aqueduct. We shouldn't have to pay. That's a water body, not part of the aqueduct. The third is, if we pay, it should be a differential rate, because the city doesn't pay anything to maintain that lake like it maintains the entire water system. All of the reservoirs, all the dams, the control structures, the aqueducts themselves. And the last is, 80% of the water that we take from the lake, we put back in the Croton watershed cleaner. So we made those 4 arguments. Everything's been submitted, and there is no hearing date set. There's a possibility, that's as far as I'm going to go into that part. I have to speak to the town board about procedure. There's a possibility that that proceeding will conclude, and it may ripen into litigation. There's a possibility that there'll be discussions.
Okay.
What we did learn is that there's a contract from 1979 that the city signed with the town of Carmel. I had not seen, that was 20 years in its term, so it's been expired for 20 years, that basically subjected the town, your district, to those water rates, which is expired, which is another argument on our behalf. But, go ahead.
Just, I'm not gonna get granular on this, but, just based on what you said, there were 4 points, and I'm not a lawyer, God help us all, but there were 4 points, it seems, to the litigation. One of those, I think, was the most important one, maybe I'm wrong, is that Lake Oneida is not part of the New York City reservoir system.
That's correct.
So having said that, is there commonality with the other towns and jurisdictions in that regard?
Maybe one. That I, in my research, that I've determined that one of the other 75 users has a similar situation.
So again, I'm not a lawyer, and I'll leave with this. Does it make, from a legal point of view, for us to be part of that litigation when in fact we have a unique circumstance, other than another town or village, of actually drawing water from a body of water that the city owns but is not part of the reservoir system? It seems like that's a separate issue that should be litigated on its own.
It's a terrific question. And one of the things that I had to consider and the board had to consider is if you bring an action and there is an administrative remedy available to you before you bring the action can be dismissed for what's known as failure to exhaust. So at this point, the district is in that proceeding. Whether or not it will continue that way is going to be up to the board after I consult with them.
So at least I
strategic
think,
components of it.
hopefully we can say that that particular aspect should be taken under consideration by the board. Because again, in a perfect world, which we don't live in, I do, but most other people don't, the absolute best case scenario is a determination is made as a matter of law that in actual fact, City of New York does not, nor have they ever had the legal right to charge Carmel Water District Number 2. I'm just
going to clarify that.
I'm setting out the perfect world.
The perfect world. The caveat to that is the city still owns the water.
I get that.
And the bed by virtue of an
I get that.
1893 acquisition.
I
So
get that.
the district should be subject to some rate. The problem is that we're subject to the water board's rates for all of the other 75 upstate users, or 74 upstate users, and that's the issue. Because
I
the
mean,
rates are absorbed.
but the underlying issue, I think, the question is, you may have just answered, I don't know if you did or not, is in fact the town subject to the rate at all?
To the water board rates.
They
Yes.
are.
No, I'm agreeing that is the question.
Okay, that is the question. Great, this is exhausting. Here's my final question, the big one. I live on Kelly Ridge Road at the top of the hill. We have no water pressure. I just spent $3,000 on a new hot water heater that had a lifetime warranty. I was complaining to one of my colleagues who's a lawyer, and I said, yep, you got a lifetime warranty. The Carmel Water just blew out this lifetime warranty, hot water heater. And he goes, well, what was the lifetime of the hot water heater? I go, well, it's dead. He goes, well, that was the lifetime. But the point of the matter is, see, you can appreciate that, right? But the point of the matter is this. Here's the big question. I live on the top of Kelly Ridge Road. We have brown water. We have redundant house water filter systems. It's still, I think someone had mentioned the fact that the various taps and shower diverters, et cetera, it's cost us about $5,000 because they've been totally destroyed. They were new 13 years ago. So my question is this, the big one. I live up there. When will I turn on the tap of my kitchen sink and I will have, number one, full and appropriate water pressure, which we do not have now, and I think I read in the report should be around 30, 35 PSI. Right now, if you at certain times of the day, it's 18 PSI at the garden hose. When will I turn the tap on and have full pressure and clean water? I live on top of Kelly Ridge Road. Answer, please.
John, Rich, Tommy.
Let's assume that the bond resolution is approved.
Presume
Tonight?
all of the money is there. It's not a money answer.
So
It's
you
a
would
technical question.
go out to design contract, all of that, all of the relining
Yeah,
work this year.
I get it.
And you probably commence execution next year. That would be my guess. You've got a 1-year design period from the time you get go, and then you would be in construction. So a year to a year and a half.
So it's April 2019, so by Christmas of 2021, we could be drinking clear water with pressure?
That's fully conceivable.
This is the best, this is like a Easter miracle, I can't believe it. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I took so much time.
All right.
Yeah, this goes through. Everything is approved. When does the average resident see a tax increase? That's all we're paying.
Okay.
Next year?
All right. Mary Ann's gonna answer that for you.
Does anybody have a date?
How long do we have to sell our houses? Put our houses on the market.
If we were to authorize the 13.3 million tonight, and as John said, if we were to start that project after the completion of the project, you would see an increase in your taxes on the 13 million a year after the completion of the project. So depending on how long it would take for the 3 years, so we're looking at probably 2021, so I'd say 2022, but you would see an increase in your taxes.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we won't
That's
see-
based on the
so
13.3
we won't see our
million.
tax bill change until the year 2022? Is that
Well,
what you're
no,
saying?
there's
For this
different-
project?
For the 13.3 million, there's the time frame that's up on the slideshow right now. So the 2.3 million is the project that is underway and almost complete. We would bond that out after we were to pay the retainers, so we would bond that out in probably 2020. Okay, the water meter project is also currently underway. Once that is complete, we would bond that out, but only for 5 years. So there's different stages that you're gonna see your taxes.
So when does the first stage start, that we will see an increase in our taxes?
2020.
2020.
Okay, but that's only the 2.3 million, okay? So that would only be an increase of, I think it was $80 if it was a 15-year bond, okay? The water meter project is gonna cost about $155 a year, so that's gonna be a 5-year ban is what we're gonna do. We're not even gonna bond that out, we would just do a ban on that. So the water meter project could be paid in full before we were to bond out the 13.3 million. Okay, because the 13.3 million could take 3 to 5 years, and then, so it's gonna be in stages. We're gonna, do bans on this in stages, and, the water treatment plants probably we would not, obviously.
So is it correct to say, I was told recently my taxes would go up? I don't want to do that.
Will the water bill increase also?
The consumption, no.
No, the price. The water bill. When you get the water bill.
So I was told that my taxes would go up between $1,500 to $3,000 with this project going on. So we
we are planning to have to sell our house within the next 4 years. So am I in that bracket? Is
15,
that correct?
it would depend on the assessed value of your home.
Okay.
Okay, so if your assessed value of your home was $407,000,
So it's less than that.
400, okay, so it's less than that. So if it was, let me just get to that slide. So if it was 407, okay, thousand, and we were to bond that out, that includes the 2.3 million for the water line replacement, the distribution facility plant of 13.3 million, and the water tank replacement, then it would be $585. But as I said before, these are all going to happen in stages. So the water meters will be paid off in 5 years. And then after that, we would end up, bond out the 13.3. So it's,
So Mary Ann, go moving forward to
It's-
this woman's
Mhm.
thing. Can we do a table with the different, like the 2.3 million, the 1.82 million, and the dates, like the years of it?
I can do an estimated
And just say,
timeframe,
in
right.
2020, it's gonna raise 80%, $80. In 2021, 155, but then if some of the bonding comes off in 2025.
I
it
can
would
do a
be
table
this.
that includes
If you could
retiring
do-
debt, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
I could
Okay.
do that, yes.
So very
Yes.
confusing for the average person.
Your fear.
Right.
Yeah.
Point of order.
We're frightened, we're
Point
frightened.
of order, point of order, please. I understand that the first row had their chance, the second row, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but we still have the third row and the fourth row and the back.
Okay, we have to go back to the rows, ma'am.
Okay.
The gentleman's correct, but something came up during the presentation that you were concerned about, and,
But I can definitely work on a table. I think that definitely would be helpful to,
We'll get back to answer that question.
All right, I'm fine.
Okay, so, third row, over here, yes, sir.
My name's Elliot Chair. I live at 38 Lindy with my wife. I'll endeavor to be brief and succinct. I'm a retired educator. I taught economics. I'm very good with numbers, but there are so many numbers that have passed through my head this evening that I can't say that I will be able to talk intelligently or ask a great question. But I know that we're talking about quality of life issues. And we're all concerned about that. My wife and I have been living in Poland for about 17 years, and we love it. We absolutely love it. But there are issues, obviously, with taxes, and we're very concerned about that. And I'm not able to make any judgment this evening about the water safety and the need to update infrastructure, because you're the experts. To be honest, I know nothing about that, but I do know economics. And I do know that in the 17 years I've lived in Carmel, our total property tax bill has increased about 27%. The reason we're staying is because we love it. But the quality of life issue that we're wrestling with, my wife and I, is the fact that the tax bill has increased so enormously. So I just want to reflect on the idea that if we really need this project and it's a safety issue and we'll all benefit from it, it's one of those things that you have to pay for. But I can't say that I'm totally convinced based on everything that I've seen. But I do know that from an economic perspective, over the course of the next 5 years, we have to be aware of the impact on the community with regard to the constituents' ability to pay the tax bill, what's going to happen to property values, and whether or not the quality of life will be so adversely affected by these decisions that we have to really be extremely careful. So once again, I can't comment on whether or not we need the water plant. It sounds like we do. Looking at the photos, obviously we're concerned about water issues. We don't want to be Flint, Michigan. But on the other hand, if our property taxes have increased 27% in the 17 years, going forward and projecting that, we're really concerned about our ability to stay in Carmel, and we love it here. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I really do appreciate it. But consider that the tax issue is such a paramount issue.
No, well, I want to
follow up on that.
What's that?
I wanted to follow up on that comment.
Okay, go ahead. I'll let you. Go ahead.
This will be quick.
Sure.
I can promise. I'm Stanley Gorman. I've lived here 34 years. I'm 79 and worried about my budget too. There seems to be an underlying premise behind all this
that the population in Carmel, in Water District 2, is going to increase by 50% within the period of this. I find that difficult to accept. It's already, we're seeing a lot of development. We've seen a lot in the last 10 years. The first 10 years we lived here, we saw little. Is this acceptable to the board, that there should be this level of development and planning within the area in the near future? Because if it's not acceptable to the board, this project is too big.
We would need the final plant report, correct? To just this gentleman's concerns about overall.
I think that what he's concerned about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the future build-out when we were trying to figure out the gallons per day that would be needed. Can you maybe go over, and I think that this would be a representative from Hazen, because this was the engineering firm that we're utilizing for Water District 2 for the plant, but in order to get that Water District 2 study done, they had to do a safe yield analysis and they had to go out projecting what future consumption may be. Maybe could you go over what you guys used to get that information?
Sure, we looked at a couple of different methodologies. So we know how many acres of undeveloped land there currently is within the district. So we did some projections based on some recent developments and how much growth could occur. So we looked at that and we came up with a number. We also looked at historical census and growth. And it has, you're right, it has varied quite a difference between the different decades. So we kind of did an average with that. We did some also looked at some projections in terms of gallons per day per capita, how much water an individual person uses. And actually that trend is going downward.
But then you're making planning decisions for the town.
What the town retained my firm to come up with some projections, and that's what we've done. We've submitted a
And they're running with
draft. We've submitted a draft, and based on those trends, it's showing an increase in demand that the water treatment plant would have to serve.
So my question is, do they accept the expansion in population that your forecast, your proposal suggests?
Not finalized.
We don't have the report yet. We're not expected to get the report until September, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. We will not see the report until September.
So what's the question?
So we can't answer something.
The good news is tonight, we're not worried so much about the plan. The plan is definitely a large concern. Tonight's not a decision for the plan. Tonight's a decision, what we're looking at doing a resolution on, are we gonna do $13.3 million for the distribution, for the pipes alone? This is not the Cadillac plan, this is the Chevy plan, this is not full replacement, this is relining. That's what tonight is about. I have a feeling probably within a couple months, we're gonna have another one of these meetings, talking about another 1.8 million that we gotta look at, or 1.2 or 1.3, whatever we're gonna look at for towers. That's gonna be the next one. And then probably 6 months, 7 months later, we'll have a review on this, what we're looking at for this water study. And then maybe winter time, beginning of 2020, spring, we'll have another meeting talking about the plant at that point. Hopefully we'll have updates for what's going on with distribution line, but it's gonna be a lot of meetings going forward. There's just unfortunately been decades of, I'm not gonna say that there's been decades of neglect, but there's been decades where everything's been reactive and not proactive. We're working on being proactive. We've seen from your residents, there's issues with water. Water quality is a massive concern across the United States and across the world, so we're definitely looking at it. Tonight's really about getting a lot of information out there. Most important information to have out there is based on distribution. Are we gonna do this approval for 13 million tonight? Or are we gonna say, let's keep this public hearing open, let's get some more feedback, and let's talk about it, 30 days, whatever it may be. So that's really tonight's decision for us as the board, is are we gonna do a $13+ million bond resolution saying we could borrow up to that amount?
Up to is the
Up to.
secret word that it just said. It could be 8, it could be 7, it could be 9, it could be 11. Up to.
But the future build-out will be for a later discussion when we have the information.
We'll have follow-up meetings based on the reports that we're.
Population that worries me, not the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. No, we share your same concern that you have. We do.
Those will also be addressed in what we're doing with our comprehensive master plan that we're waiting on qualifications for from outside firms. So we're going to be talking about possibly zoning changes, code changes. So those will all be incorporated as well. So there will be a lot of future discussions in regards to what the future of the entire town is, not just Water District 2.
Thank you. Yes, sir?
Hi, Bobby Okanuski. I live up in off of Lindy and Seminary, Little Pond Manor. First of all, I don't know what you guys are expecting an increase in population when basically everybody I know is talking about moving out. You're basically taxing people out of these neighborhoods. You know, I just became retired, and already this year I'm gonna have to start looking. The taxes are so far out of hand. And now instead of my $1,000 increase for this year, or whenever this starts, so now you're telling me I'm gonna have a $4,000 increase. You know, because these numbers are just out of hand. So you do have to take this into consideration. Now, I did have a couple of questions on the tank systems. You had to do epoxy and sandblasting. Did you have internal bladder systems in these or not? Why? Don't most of these storage tanks have bladder systems? Every tank I've worked on had a bladder system. Is that an alternative we can look at?
No, these are all, they're steel wall tanks.
Yeah, all the ones I've had experience with were also steel wall, and they were lined with bladders. So there was no coating on them, right?
These are all coated, they're 50-year-old coated steel tanks.
So can we look into doing a bladder system instead of redoing that?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, now I was also following up, a few people touched on it. The way I just glanced at these papers, it was looking like low, medium, and high bids from different companies for the same job. Is that correct? Talking about, like, yeah, well, no, for each job, for each of these proposals. Like, what I'm looking at it is, like, different companies bid different prices for the same work.
So
there was nothing in here like, if we can't afford the $8 million fix, there's a $5 million fix.
So there are no bids on any of the projects that are being.
Okay, so these are just estimates.
They're all estimates. I think that the numbers that Rich put up for the tanks are costs from the tank manufacturers, FOB, right? So tanks freight on board on the truck from wherever the place of manufacture is, and then the cost escalates to whatever he had on the slide. Everything else that's in there is an estimate.
Okay, understood. Now, just as a footnote here, I heard somebody mention prevailing wage. So I know there's a lot of union labor in this county. Are these union jobs or non-union jobs?
So they are all prevailing wage union jobs.
Union jobs, okay. Because prevailing wage doesn't mean union.
Well, so the town is obligated to bid its work prevailing wage.
Okay,
They're
understood.
also obligated to take the low bid contractor who must provide certified payroll. Whether he does that and he's got a contract with the local union or not is not the town's responsibility. They have to pay the prevailing wage, which in 9 cases out of 10 since we've been working here, means that they have a contract with the union, but it's not a requirement.
Okay, understood. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on the third row on that side? Third row this side. Anybody else? All right, we're going to go over to here. Yes, sir?
Hello, my name is James Carmody. I'm a 20-year resident of Carmel. Now, I live in a household of 5. Every one of us is working, and in 2017 I had a part-time minimum wage job, and during the year I made $7,800. Now, the highest partial annual tax increase would have been $1,180. And that's a mere 15% of the income I made on a part-time minimum wage job. And it's only one of the 5 incomes my family generated during the year 2017. So it seems to me, when I do the math, it's a no-brainer to fund the water district. I'd like to know how this cost on property tax compares to other property taxes we're paying in this town.
Mary Ann, did you understand the question?
So water versus sewer versus.
Water versus.
You're talking about like taxes for different water districts or, you know,
Every property tax paid for in Cornwall, but
well, it would depend. I mean, I would have to look at the, you know, various tax bills. I would have to, you know, look at the overall cost, annual budget for, you know, certain districts.
Yeah.
I mean, water district, the good thing about water district two is there are, you know, 2,300 taxable parcels. So if you look at, say I live in water district number 9, my water taxes are actually higher than the water district taxes in water district 2 because it's a smaller pool of residents, of taxable parcels. So, you know, but then again, the overall cost for water district 9 is less than the cost for water district 2. So, you know, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but.
Is the budget presentation still on the website? Because
It is.
He might be asking for the breakout of school portion, the lighting portion, the sewer portion, and there's a nice.
A pie chart, yeah, the
that-
pie
that
chart that
shows
would break out your school taxes versus, you know, your town, your fire district taxes.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at that, yeah, I can.
We could email that to you. We
Mhm.
can get that to you. And it's
For
a
your-
pie chart, and it shows what percentage of your taxes go towards water, sewer, lighting, fire, things like that. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Percentage of the total property taxes?
yes, and would you happen to know the percentage of that paid for to water at the moment?
Yep.
Water would be.
Yeah, water, yeah.
Water's in there.
Yeah, and, yeah, everything is calculated the same way, it just, the overall cost is gonna be different, you know, versus, you know, the assessed value of your, you know, of your home. So, but, yeah, that pie chart, we could get that to you.
Mary Ann, is that under the budget presentation
I,
on
you
our
know,
website?
I don't know, I'd have to look and see if,
It's usually on the 12 slides that you present.
yeah,
It's still on
I'd
the
have to look
website.
and see if it's still on, if the budget presentation is on there. If it's not, I can easily, you know,
I'll tell you what,
do that.
let's, we get your email address?
You don't have to give it to us.
You don't give it to us over the TV, but if you could give it to Ann over here, we'll make sure we email you that tomorrow, that information.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yes. I'm just wondering, my income is one of the smallest you can possibly make, $7,800 a year, and yet I can afford a parcel of $1,180, no problem. It would be a small part of my income. I hope that one family of 5 with an income and generated by each person can afford a $1,180 increase in their tax bill. And I'd like to know the other taxes we're paying. It's
You want a breakout of the total taxes that you're paying, that would be in that pie chart.
yes,
As
okay.
part of the budget, you'll see exactly where your tax money is going.
You don't know right now how much is paid for to water?
You could figure at least 2/3 is paid to school. Right off the bat, the vast majority is going to the schools. Then you're looking between county, town, half of the remaining, and then I'd say probably when you're in special districts, probably the other half. So it might be 15% of the total bill. With this increase, it might be 20% of the total bill. But yeah, we'll definitely get you the numbers. But no matter what, where we're at right now is the vast majority of our tax money. This is where our money goes to. Super majority of our money goes right into our school systems.
So it seems to me there's not much to be paid for to fund the water district compared to our other expenses.
It's a lot to pay. It's a lot to pay, but percentage-wise, yes, you are definitely paying more for the schools that the children of our community go to than what you would be paying for your lighting, your sewer, your police, your highway, any of the services that are offered through the town or the county. The school definitely is the vast majority of where our tax money goes.
So it seems that everyone with a job such as mine or even more lucrative than mine, can afford this proposed parcel increase. And it's one that benefits everyone in our community, all 5,300 of us, especially the future generations we are raising in this town. In 30 years, we'll be seeing families grow, and if this healthy, thriving community is not kept maintained, we're not going to have a Carmel to call home in 2050. And the water bill is not going to be a huge part of our expenses. When I pay my property taxes, I'm going to know this water bill is for everyone. And so with the numbers be expressed by you, I'm happy to restate my math and say it's a no-brainer to fund the water district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Anybody else on that side, right side? Anybody else? So you can come in right behind, if there are, just, you can stand behind for now. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Cindy Cole-Briley. I've lived in Carmel for 55 years, and I currently live on Kelly Ridge Road. And I just want to thank all of you who listened to me over a year and a half ago about the water problems and everything up on our road. I greatly appreciate that. My current concern right now is the piping being redone on Kelly Ridge Road. All new piping.
So Kelly Ridge is one of that Kelly and Everett, St.
Yeah.
Michael's Terrace, right? That's all.
St. Michael's is PVC pipe right now.
I think it's actually, Lou and I had this conversation, I think
The
part of it's
old
transite.
section isn't the new section.
Which road again? Everett?
St. Michael.
No, Kelly Ridge.
St. Michael's, cast iron, actually. And I put in about 15 clamps in that one section. I'm willing to bet there's more than that in there.
At any rate,
On the
that's,
paper, it says St. Michael's has PVC pipe.
it's gonna be, it is one of those roads that we're gonna reline. We're gonna reline. it.
Okay, are you relining Kelly Ridge, or are you putting in new piping?
No, relining. The new piping piece is concluded as far as I'm concerned at this stage of the game, except for the extension down Stoneley Avenue, if that goes. Everything else that's currently shown on the map in yellow is gonna get relined.
Okay, so currently how bad Kelly Ridge is, and the fact that my water is real disgusting. I've had to replace my dishwasher, my washing machine, everything on my oil burner. I'm getting tired of it. And you better guarantee me that the lining of the piping is going to work. If not, I want new pipes down my road. Thank you.
It'll work.
John Lang, Carmel resident, about 6 years. My question is, can you just explain to us how the voting works? Is it just all in, going through with everything, or is it voting on different parts of
You
it?
mean tonight?
Yes.
Tonight we're just, doing, I believe it's the 13.3 million. Tonight is, the bond for the 13.3 million. Up to.
And that's for the water
Yes.
distribution main.
Okay, and that, how long is that sustainable for over the future?
The life expectancy
The
of it?
life expectancy of that $13 million, how long will
That's
that?
the 30 years that was referenced by Mr. Fulchetti.
And with that bond, what interest rate will the town residents be paying that?
That's Mary Ann, hold on.
Two.
That would be, the 13.3 million, are you talking about the life expectancy of the bond?
Well, what's the interest on the bond?
Okay, the interest on the bond, and these are estimates, the estimates that we do now, so it will depend on when we bond it out. So, you know, if we were to bond it out now, the interest rate at 15 years would be approximately 2.3%. 20 years is 2.5% and 30 years is 2.8%. Now, again, if we apply for EFC funding, it would be less than that. But these are interest rates at our AA1 bond rating.
And now, once you proceed with everything, you won't know the grants you get until you propose, this is what we're going through with.
Correct. And then, we would bond out the total cost of the project less the grants that we received.
I just don't know how you can put estimates up when you don't know how you're gonna proceed with what.
Well, it's just an estimate to get an idea of what the cost would be per taxpayer, at a high,
So from the 15-year to the 30-year, it's more feasible to go 15 years for money reasons.
Correct.
But it's a harder fight for the taxpayers.
Exactly, it's a harder annual burden, for
But we won't know
taxpayers.
what the grants could be until we go through with it.
Correct.
And now who votes on when it goes to 15 years or 30 years? Is that tonight's vote?
That's not tonight, that would be something that would be discussed with the board once we're ready to bond it out.
So my last question is, how many different votes are there? Tonight is the 13 million, then where does it get up to where the one member said 36 million? Is there different steps that they can slow it down?
Well, the 36 million included the 18 million of a high,
that was all in
yes,
36.
exactly, that was all in. Yeah, so
All-in number.
the 13.3 is what they're voting on today as far as just authorizing the borrowing.
But that doesn't include the
For the
filtration,
distribution.
that's just the distribution service.
Correct. Mhm.
And that does not include the towers.
It does not include the towers. We'll have to have another public hearings over the next couple of weeks, couple months on the towers.
Now, I just want, last question with the towers. With the towers, if you do reline the towers, are they gonna put in the agitators or just reline it?
There would be a whole bunch of recommendations that were made as part of the study that was performed, a whole bunch of recommendations made as part of the study. If we're gonna do it, we're gonna do all those recommendations and bring it up to speed or, to where it's supposed to be.
And now, how long will those water towers' life expectancy?
We mentioned that before, we
don't.
We don't know, but we have guarantees for it.
Go back to the 1936 tank. I know, when I worked down there for about 15 years, first off, the one up on Clock Ridge Road up there behind ShopRite was painted and refurbished. The same thing with Kelly Ridge, and the same thing with the one up at Lindy Drive. Now, if you look at the 1936 tank, that tank had to be refurbished a few times over the years. Otherwise, it wouldn't have lasted as long as it did. So, really, you're looking at something, to my eyes, you're looking at something, if I refurbish it and take care of it, it's going to last. If you don't take care of it, it's going to break down. So, the best thing to do, I hate to spend money, I don't like it either, I'll be honest with you, but I got to take care of it.
Thank you. Marianne, can you clarify in regards to the financing, the difference between, so if we say tonight we're gonna borrow 13.3 million, it doesn't mean right now, we have $13.3 million right now and everybody's gonna start paying on it. Can you explain what a bond anticipation note is, then going through the bond afterwards, and maybe
Sure.
give everybody a little bit more info on finance?
Sure. With the bond anticipation note, what we do is we just finance a piece of the 13 million less. So say the board authorized the 13 million tonight. We would first issue a band, which is a bond anticipation note, say of the first phase of the project. So say we did the 13 million and then the project began, we have to have some kind of funding in place, cash, in place. So we would issue a bond anticipation note of say 2 million to get the first stage done. Then a year later, we would do, stage 2, and we would issue another band of say 2 million. So now we're up to 4 million. Okay, and then, as the years go on, we would build up to the final cost of the project. Once the final cost of the project is done, we would look at the amount that has been financed so far, and we would bond that out at that point after a 5-year period of, say 15, 20, or 30 years. So the vote to, and it really is not even a vote of the time period to bond it out, that wouldn't be discussed until after the final cost, the final project is done.
So the 13.3 million, the vote is the authorization to start the project, start the process.
Is that, Jonathan, is that?
Yeah, that was
Yes.
perfect. So
Okay.
it's not that
Yeah.
everybody's gonna start paying on the full project right away. It's based on how much we actually spend at the time.
Exactly.
And we won't bond until we already know what we may be getting back in grants. And hopefully, with the assistance of a few participating members in tonight's panel, we're gonna be able to get a little bit of money. We have had consultants that we brought in through the town that were grant writers. We used them for a couple years. We didn't get any grants. We've been submitting a couple years now through the engineering firm, and we still haven't gotten any approvals. But every year, we will continue to submit grants. This is definitely, I would say, top priority for the entire town at this point.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely continue to work to try to make sure that we can mitigate the large dollar amounts that'll be coming down through the water district. But we definitely need to be putting some money into these projects.
Greg?
Good evening. Greg Elder, I live in Water District 2. On slide 4, an average price of $628,000 per year is what we were paying for water. What did we pay last year? Wasn't it pretty close to $1 million?
No, I think it was under 700.
The
It
average
was
is
under 700.
628 over the last 5 years.
Right, and I'm asking what, average really doesn't matter to me as a taxpayer. It's what did I have to pay last year? What am I gonna have to pay?
Yeah, no, it
going
was under
forward?
700.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 700. I noticed that we have two issues regarding the water plant. One, we have the capacity of the source, Lake Lenina. How much can we safely take out of Lake Lenina? The second thing is how much can we process? How much can we filter and disinfect? And my understanding is that the largest water user is Putnam Hospital. So as we're looking at alternatives, it seems to me that it'd be very prudent to look at putting a smaller plant local to Putnam Hospital, maybe produce 250,000 gallons per day right across the street and let them pay direct from New York City, because that would allow Lake Lenina's level to increase, and it would not, I hate to use the word, but it would not tax all us residents of Water District 2, and we wouldn't have to open up sluiceways. Plus, there's the possibility that Councilor Folchetti said that we may get some relief from New York City. I'm not going to count on that, but I'm just saying it's a possibility. And there's also the word excess charges were. So it just seems to me as a taxpayer that it makes sense to minimize the amount of outflow from Lake Lenina, even if this is slightly increased capital cost by having two water plants. Any comments?
Agreed.
I think, if I'm recalling correctly, I think that the safe yield analysis on Glenida was about 1.3. I'm not sure.
No, it was 800,000 to $1 million based upon our initial draft calculations.
Yeah, but just look at the level. And the other thing is, and I don't know, sir, from Hazen and Sawyer, right now, water has been introduced to Lake Lenina, and what I'm trying to do is eliminate, let Lake Lenina stand alone as a spring-fed lake, because that I also think that helps our legal position. Because you're telling New York City, well, we're not, this is our lake, it's our water, it's spring-fed. And they're gonna come back and say, yeah, but you don't have enough water, you're buying it from us, therefore it should be part of the watershed. So this is something that I really want everybody to be aware of and to focus on. Not to mention, from a beautification point of view, when Lake Lenina is up at its natural normal level, the town looks better. And I also have a question. As town board members, you're automatically the commissioners of Sewer District 2 and Water District 2. Is it ever possible for someone else to be a commissioner of the Water District? Lou?
I don't know.
That's a question.
That's a great question.
That's a tough one.
That's a-
He's trying to figure it out.
It's probably, hopefully it's a yes or no question.
We don't have a commission in and of itself.
Well, commissioners.
Right, we don't have a separate commission. So that's something, and honestly, Greg, offhand, I don't know.
And my last question is on the water plant. We had low, medium, and high estimates. What technology was the low, the medium, and the high based upon?
None.
None.
Just, it was based on a flow rate. The report hasn't been completed, they were just estimates based on gallons per day. 1.5 million gallon plant, $10, right? He gave
Yeah.
$10.
So
And
rule
we-
of thumb, not necessarily if it's membrane, if it's
Correct.
wrapped in sand.
There's
if
nothing
it's a
out there.
combination thereof, if
Nothing.
there's UV.
Yep, nothing
To
out there.
eliminate any cryptosporidium from our beavers that
That de-
migrate from Manpack.
That detail has not been put in there yet, Greg.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna try and make this short. I'm tired, as you are. Aileen Orta, I'm from District 2. I've not been in this town for as many years as I heard, 50 years. I've only been here for 12 years, okay? I'm also a business owner, facing Lake Lenina. And in these 12 years, I've seen the water bill go up 400% in District 2 because of the increase of the water supply. People are using up water for the developments that are happening. I understand all that. But there should have been something that someone should have thought about. If you're allowing developments, and where are these people gonna be getting their water? And this is gonna impact the residents that are living here. No one thought of that, okay? Now we're having a distillery that's coming to the Paladin Center. Where are they getting their water? I understand that they have a plan. Ultimately, I don't know where they're gonna get their water from. They're in District 2, just like Putnam Hospital, okay? So we have to really look into this. And I haven't been to many of these meetings, but I went to one last year, and it was in regards to an emergency situation about groundwater up, which was being addressed now, which was the $2 million that was spent. That was an emergency, because I understand people can't be drinking brown water or using brown water. So I understood why this had to be done, $2 million. But that's an emergency. Now, how many lines are going to be redone with the $13 million that you're proposing to use? Or is it gonna be the 52 miles, or is it gonna be 10 miles?
Approximately 10.
Approximately 10.
Just
10
miles? Those are the pipes that are made of the material that have this tuberculation issue. The PVC pipes don't have any of the issues that we've seen, and the engineers could go further in depth, but the way that they were identified was what material is the distribution system made of, and then they said, okay, let's take the coupons, confirmed what the hypothesis was on it being specifically from the material, and now that it's been identified, thankfully the course of action isn't full replacement, because we'd be looking at exponentially larger numbers. Thankfully, the integrity of the pipes are still at a point where they can be roto-rooted out, as our town engineer likes to refer to it.
Now, this is in coupons, as you guys use the word. Was this 52 miles? Did you guys do coupons on 52 miles? Or coupons around where the troubled areas were and needed to take care of the troubled areas that we are aware of now? Because right now, maybe you're taking care of the potential problem areas, and it's 13 million now. 2 years from now, someone may be coming in and saying, look, I got brown water, and it's not even near these problem areas. Are you gonna come back to us and say, well, guys, we're gonna have to take another $13 million bond and do another 10 miles? This is my concern, because it's almost like, again, piecework that you guys are doing. And I understand that lines have to be done. Lines are underground, things get clogged, I understand that, but it's just the amount and the estimates. Are they realistic? Is it being, I don't know what they're being based on. Is it being based on the $2 million emergency thing that you guys had to do? Because people really gonna put this in the press and show there's brown water, and hasn't been addressed for over a year? That was crazy when I was at this meeting. I was like, how can I be a resident where they were and just, you know, they were very patient for a year, not just getting water being trucked in, and I think some of you guys on the panel or on the board was kind of shocked to hear this. They were like, whoa, almost a year? And then you know, you did what you have to do, but it's just, I can see this escalating, you know, the water use. Now I'm hearing again that possibly water is going to, the water rate is going to increase again. And we're getting more developments coming into the area. Residential residents are new developments on Seminary Hill. We're getting a distillery, Seminary Hill. Everything is coming, and it just seems like, you know, you either gonna have a set number and say, this is what we're gonna be paying, even if it's a lot, and allocate some of that extra money for these projects instead of asking people, can I have $13 million? This should have been, I would have rather paid, let's say $10 a gallon, and not be asked later on. I'd rather, and you had the extra money for these emergency issues or these maintenance issues, than having this come up and then now you asking us maybe $1,400 and extra money that we're like, really? I wasn't even planning this.
Can we respond to a couple of your, you mentioned a lot of different things, and I appreciate the feedback. The New York City Water Board, as we mentioned earlier, they set the rates annually. They're due to set them now within the next month or two. We're going to get the, the results of that, whether or not they've increased. But going back over the past 5 or 6 years, we've seen 7, 8. There was a 9% increase. There was a 6, and I think last year it was 2 or 3. It was much less. So your water bill that you had mentioned earlier has gone up. Your water bill has increased because of the water rates have increased. The New York City Water Board increased that. So that's, unfortunately, that's passed along to the consumers, to the users that are in the district. So that answers that one part of the question that you answered. The other part was, John, what was the other one?
Coupons.
Oh, the coupons. The analysis of the coupons and what the determination was where those coupons were removed from and analyzed. That was based on an engineering report that the engineer.
It was based on where we were getting the complaints from.
So, and what I hear is your concern, and this is a question, is your concern is that in 5 years, we're only doing 10 miles now, there's another 40 miles to go, per se. So in 5 years, are we gonna come back and say, because somebody else is gonna come up with groundwater and say, we have to do another 10 miles for another $13 million. Is that a possibility? You know, I think that's what you're asking, right?
We're relining the lines where we know we have complaints and where we know we have unlined iron pipe, which is the stuff that tuberculates, and which is the stuff that transmits iron into your systems, into your homes. So we're taking care of the ones where we have complaints or where we know we have that type of pipe. The balance of the pipe that we showed on the other map is either lined iron, PVC, or transite, and typically does not grow that kind of tuberculation.
Most of these pipes have been underground for many, many years. So the 52 miles are probably, maybe not all 52 miles are old pipes because there's been new developments being tapped in. But I just have a feeling that someone down the line, it may not even be 5 years from now, it might be next year, somebody saying, and it wasn't one of the ones that were couponed. And they're saying, listen, I got water, and you're gonna, bring trucks again and bring fresh water to these people? You know, I don't know. That's not a solution either. So it's just the cost, and I just don't see, I understand that you wanna be proactive, but right now I'm just seeing a reactive situation again. I'm not seeing any proactive on this 13 million at all. I just see it as, okay, these are the potential problems that are gonna be stirring up again, so we're gonna take care of this. We're gonna put a Band-Aid on it, and then hopefully.
What would you like us to do? We looked at,
You know what I'd like you to do? I'd like you to set a rate. Stick to that rate and make sure that there's enough of a surplus so that situations like this can be taken care of as opposed to asking us for more money. Because we are being bombarded. Carmel itself is being bombarded. We just got another increase in the school. Okay, a school increase on something that I'm not gonna, because it's a democracy and it was passed, okay? But a bus garage is not necessary, okay? But
We would love to set the rates, we have no control of the rates, that's New York City.
But you're gonna come to us again, you're gonna come to us again with a new increase in rates.
No,
You made a
we're
comment
not
about being
increasing the rates.
proactive. So we included everything in tonight's meeting, including the water plant.
And 52 miles?
Which I personally saw, and it's about as obsolete as a Mercury spacecraft in the 60s. Okay? So, I'm new. All right? This came up a year ago, and a year ago I said, look at all the problems at once. Because this lady can borrow money very cheap right now. And to talk about the water tanks, talk about the distribution, without talking about the plan, is foolish, because then we're not being proactive. You have to look at everything. The number that this lady was worried about, the number that was floated around, that even came out of my mouth, was $1,500 to $2,000 a year, but that was all in, top dollar, everything going wrong in my mind. We already had good news about the water tanks and the storage tanks, which cut that bill in half. Personally, I think the $2 million line for the hospital is insane, okay? That's another 5–10%. I think the numbers for the water plants are grossly exaggerated. I think the $35 million number might come down as far as $25 million. But unless you look at the entire problem now, another person's going to be standing there in 10 years saying to the next town board, why weren't you proactive? So you have to look at everything. This board, I think I could say this for everybody, and correct me if I'm wrong. This board is not going to step forward spending 10 cents unless it's necessary. And we will come back to you with what we discussed earlier of some type of chart simplifying. We already know the water meters are done. It's $155 for 5 years. So Mary Ann can go out 2019 to 2024. We're going to ask her to go out to 2029, give you a 10-year projection of what's coming off your sewer bill, what's coming off your capital improvements on your water bill, and splitting up everything that's proposed new. So you can see it on a simple item chart with the word if next to it. If we did this, it would go up this much. If we did this, it would go up this much. But you have a problem, okay? A year ago, at that meeting, I was against the emergency funding, okay? I don't like how it was bid out, I don't like how anything was done. I like how this is starting. We'll see how it ends, okay? Bottom line is we're trying to bring you as much information as we can. And I know, speaking to several people out there, and everybody else speaking to several people out there, that numbers are gonna come in a lot less than the numbers that are throwing out now. But we'd rather throw everything out at you so you absorb it now and not mislead you 2 or 3 years from now. What's gonna happen to the other 10 miles? We don't know. But we know these 10 miles are shot. That has to be fixed. But personally, I think you need a water plant. So are you gonna borrow the money now at 2%? Or are you gonna wait 4 or 5 years and borrow the money at 4%? So all this is an informational meeting, and we keep saying 13.3 million. Mary Ann said it perfectly. You are not paying the freight on $13 million starting tomorrow. You might be paying the freight on 1 to 2 million 18 months from now, or 2 years from now. The majority of these numbers are going to come in in the mid-2000s, 2020s. Am I right or wrong? Okay?
Early 20s.
The majority of this bill should come in between 2022 and 2028 to 2029. All right? The gentleman says he's only going to be here another 15 years. I hope he's here another 30 years. Okay? Because we're all getting up with the gray hair to the ages where we're wondering about this.
But it's not aging.
But no one's disputing every single thing you said just now. Or what you said, or what you said, sir, or what anybody else said. But you have to know the numbers. I know there are very smart people that live in Carmel too that are in this business. Okay? So trust me, all heads are working on the cost of a new water system. All people are going to watch how this is bid out and how this is run. So no one's going to waste a dollar. And that's the only thing I could add. And I mean, I was saving that for the end, but your system's shot. Your plant is shot. You want to put it off 5 years? You might be borrowing at 4.4%. It's happened before. Instead of 2.2. 5 years ago, you could have borrowed at 1.5 or 1.7. The more you put it off, the more it's going to cost you. And that's all. I can keep going, but that's it.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak on this topic? Come on up at this time. Sir, how are you?
Frank Morel, Morel to Retreat. I have a few questions. The 301 and the Glenida Ridge project, is that fully completed now? Everything in place, house connections connected, fire hydrants working, valves working? Is that done or not?
I believe so, but John.
All of the new installation is complete. We have yet to sever the old lines and abandon them. All the house services are in place and the system is functional.
Okay. Working on the north side of 301 right now, how do you connect to the south side?
We bored underneath Route 301 and connected it at the foot of Glenview Road. It's done, it's complete.
You bored underneath the 301 and connected a new line. Now the project is complete. Was that bonded out already? Is that included in the new bond or not?
No, the 2.3 will not be bonded out until after we pay the retainage, which would be a year from completion of the project.
Okay, so that's.
So 2020.
So that bond is not included in the bonds that you're talking about?
It is included. It's included in the presentation, yes. We did have to float a ban on that because we did have to have funding in place in order to pay the contractor. But once the final costs are in, we would bond out, not the 2.3, we'll bond out whatever the final cost of the entire project to include the design cost and everything else.
Okay, also on 301, there's like a rock cropping on a certain section on the north side. How did you bypass that?
We bored under it.
You bore it under and sleeved another sleeve underneath? I think at this point, the board has to be looking at any kind of repairs that are going out. Maybe repairs instead of like one bid because it's an emergency. Maybe you should be looking at other repairs to lower the cost down. I think the more bids we get on repairs. And also, can you use our house engineers, the town engineers, to engineer a project or to design a project? Is that in their capability to do something like that? As far as the safe yield analysis, I know you were going to look into it to see the process of that, Ken, and to see how to go about that. Is that possible to use our own engineers on?
No, the safe, yeah, we had started that, and the safe yield analysis is with the firm, Hazen and Sawyer firm is going to be conducting that. That's a specialty service that requires certain expertise in that type of safe yield analysis is not something that, our engineers, our in-house engineers could perform. That's a study that's done by those who have done these in the past. That's what their business is geared towards. They're an engineering firm that specializes in that. So your answer is that's why we selected an engineering firm to do that yield study.
You felt that it was a specialty project?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned on a couple of meetings ago about a parkland trust fund. Could you explain that to the audience here, as what the...
The Parkland Trust Fund is the former developers fund, where developers that constructed either townhouses, condos, or single-family dwellings in the town of Carmel, they're required to pay monies that go into the Parkland Trust Fund account, and the trust fund funds that are in there can only be used for recreation capital projects, recreation projects for the community. Single-family homes was $7,500 per single-family home that was constructed. Condos and townhomes was $3,500 that the developer was required to pay into that recreation Parkland Trust Fund account.
So could there be a trust fund developed just for water too?
That's that one. I'm going to defer to legal counsel on that one.
It's an entirely different inquiry.
It's an entirely different inquiry, and what happens is that there's the funds that are set aside within the budget lines for water two are funded through an assessment of all the ratepayers within the water district. So if you're saying that when somebody comes in to develop a property, they would have to pay something extra to be allowed to be within the district to utilize the mains and the services, is that the suggestion?
No, they're paying extra for park lands, to pay for park facilities. Why can't the fund be made up to pay for the water district too?
Every property owner within the district is subject to the assessments that are levied in the district every year for capital, for operation and
Yeah, it's
maintenance,
not
and if
the
they're
problem.
using.
You're collecting money from the builders who build projects here, and that goes into a fund.
Correct, for recreation.
Recreational.
Because this is,
Water too.
it's a taxing mechanism for a public utility, and there's no mechanism for the town to seek extra from the developer for the use of the water. They're paying the assessments by being the owners of the property as it stands, and when it's developed, and they begin using it, they obviously pay for the consumption as well. But if they're benefited by a main, they're paying the assessment whether or not the parcel's vacant or developed.
Or if the drum water.
The only thing you could raise is the hookup fee.
There's a tap fee? Yeah.
There's a tap-in fee that I was gonna bring up towards the end that can be raised. You can't put a fee. There's a tap-in fee that can be raised. You can get some money, but you can't get crazy with it.
A couple of meetings ago, there was a gentleman that discussed, he brought up to the board projects from different local towns that have received money to replace water tanks for infrastructure. Did the board look at those towns to see how they went about receiving that money, that grants?
John can do that. That was in.
John?
That was all of
Yeah.
this.
All of the grant applications and all of the low-interest loan applications and market rate interest loan applications go through the Environmental Facilities Corporation up in Albany. They get their money for water projects from the EPA through the Safe Drinking Water Act. EFC works with the State Department of Health, and the applications go to them. They score them. So they score them on a basis of public health and safety, need of the project, how bad is the infrastructure, et cetera. There's a 15 or 20 different lines to get you a score that can go up north of 2,000 points if possible, okay? That's one aspect is that there's a project score and then there's a community score. So Most of that is based on median household income in the community, and then the comparison of that statistic to the statewide median household income and the statewide poverty level. So there's a project score, then there's a community score, okay? And the project may have a very high need, but a wealthy community that can afford it because they're not near the poverty level isn't gonna get a grant. May get a market rate loan or a low interest rate loan. So we can identify the project and we can put together the grant application and we can offer our statistics to fill in for the score for the community and how bad, you know, a picture of those water pipes would go a long way towards getting a high score on health, okay?
The person that you hired for the grants, you know, never materialized. The question is, did you check with the towns that the gentleman mentioned and see how they went about the process?
Yes, they went about the process through EFC.
Okay,
So that is the process. Yes.
Okay.
John, can you explain the difference, because yesterday we were talking about funding, and there's two different types of water funding. One is what?
Clean water
funds.
and drinking water.
And one is drinking water funds, and that's it's very good, it was confusing to me, it's very confusing. Like some of these were all clean water, some were clean water and some were drinking water.
You're talking
and they
about
come
that
from
list,
two different pots.
list in the question and answer, so there's like 40
Yes.
of those.
Right.
And 9 of them are drinking water, and the balance of them are wastewater projects, because they fall under the clean water. So the EPA gets funding from Congress to fund the EFC under the Clean Water Act, and all of that is wastewater or stormwater related projects. So that's not water that you consume. Those are the clean water projects and represent the vast majority of the projects that are on that list. The drinking water projects are funded via the Safe Drinking Water Act. The scoring process is the same because it's EFC that's doing it on both sides. They work with the state health department on the drinking water ones, and they work with the State Department of Environmental Conservation on the wastewater and the stormwater projects. But the funding pools come out of Clean Water Act for wastewater, Safe Drinking Water Act for drinking water. The application, 2 scores, one for the project and then one for the community's financial ability to pay. And that's based on what the actual income level is in the community compared to statewide MHI and statewide poverty level. And the scoring is done there.
The people that bought the groundwater in the Galata Ridge area, have they been contacted to make sure that the groundwater has disappeared now?
They've been calling and telling us they like their water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vacant land was brought up on your analysis. How much vacant land is there in Water District 2 where buildable projects could be built to connect to the system?
We'll get back to you with that.
Do you have another question?
That'll be it, thank you.
Okay, they're researching your answer now. Okay, the answer. Is there anybody else that wants to come up and comment or speak on the water infrastructure? Yes, ma'am.
So just so you know, the estimated total acreage of vacant land in residential is 335 acres, commercial is 20, commercial business park is 52. So that's about 400 acres. Estimated usable acreage of vacant land is 270. So there's about 270 acres of usable land that's vacant right now. In the district, 208 of it is residential. Sorry, you're up.
That usable land, is it serviced by water and sewer?
It's in the district, so yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Terry Techosta, Seminary Hill Road. I don't understand the funding portion of this, Okay,
Well,
a project's gonna cost, let's say, $2 million, like $2 million, and you don't fund that until it's done. You don't put a bond out till it's done, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But you had to pay for that.
Right, so that's the,
So where
that's
do you
the
get that
bond
money?
anticipation note. Okay, so a bond anticipation note is, you know, say we get a bond anticipation note for $2 million.
Okay.
We go out for bids on that bond anticipation note. A bunch of banks come back and say, you know, and bid on it. We always go with the lowest bid, and they give us the funding. A year later, that ban comes due. Okay, and if the project is not done, we would float the ban another year. Okay, and then once the project is done, we would take that ban and then bond that money out for the 15, 20, or 30 years.
Thank you.
So,
I did not understand that at all. I had
okay,
no
I'm
idea.
sorry. I'm sorry, yeah.
Very
No
confusing.
idea.
Yeah, so the ban is,
These people.
basically, it's, you look at it as a, kind of like like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a revolving loan,
Yeah,
right?
well, like when I did my, when I
A
built
home
my-
equity.
Right.
You
when I
look at it
built
like a
my-
home
when I built
equity.
my house, I had my builder's loan.
Exactly,
And then when I
yeah.
was finished building, I got my regular
You got your
mortgage.
regular.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Exactly
A home
right.
equity loan, and you float the home equity, you only have to pay interest on it, you pay it down as you can, but then when you get the final cost, then you bond it out for a 15, 20, or 30 year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good analogy.
Yeah. Is there anyone else that would like to come up? Come on up to the podium now,
I
please.
have just one more question.
After this gentleman.
Real quick, sorry. My name is Michael Dean, I live on Collier Drive West. My concern is, like, if you drive around our block, there's a lot of pipes that have broken over the past 5 years, maybe. What's the difference between Collier and Kelly Ridge as compared to the pipes that you replaced over on Glenida Ridge? Like, you replaced the whole system on Glenida Ridge, if I'm correct, right? What was the difference with that area as compared to the other areas in the district? Like, was it that much worse? I mean, because my concern is that you're gonna put linings in the pipes, and if they're gonna keep breaking, we're just gonna keep getting, you know, every time it breaks, we get brown water. So is that gonna continue to happen even after the lining? Or are we just putting good money into bad pipes?
No, I don't believe that you're putting good money into bad pipe. The lining process is historically proven to be able to deliver clean water. The answer to your first question was the emergency declaration that was made in the December of 17. Because that project had been forecast to be a lining project as well. The complaints became so loud and frequent that we couldn't guarantee. We had a flushing program in place where we were flushing like once every couple of weeks or something. Okay, but we were heading into a winter season. The flushing wasn't working at that cycle, and we were unable to do a lining project in the wintertime because lining requires laying temporary water line at grade on the ground. Okay, so doing that in the winter doesn't work, and that's why when we talk about this lining project, it's not a 12-month job unless you bring in, 5 guys to do it all at the same time in small chunks. So I'm very comfortable that we're not gonna see the kinds of breaks, okay, that we see unless they're just laid on something, laid on rock or something. And it doesn't make any difference what you put in there at that stage of the game.
So what you're saying is if you put PVC and replace them, they could break anyway?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's my question, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
I just have one more comment, I guess, to you.
Can you go up to the mic?
She doesn't like that.
She doesn't like, you don't like Mike?
I don't like it.
All right.
But anyway, so I live on Fair Street for 33 years. And I'm going through my 9th washing machine since I've lived in my house because it fills with sediment. So the water company has come over the past to try to resolve the problem and issued us filters for our filter system that my husband had installed in our house. They stopped with the filters several years ago, and now we incorporated that cost. Every month we have to put a new filter in a commercial filter system that we put in our house. And I live on Fair Street at the bottom of Kelly Ridge. So with all this stuff happening, will we see an improvement on Fair Street?
Part of that is tied to the plant. Councilman Brothers already talked about how antiquated it is, and Rich brought up earlier, how much diatomaceous earth we're going through. That,
I was getting like this much.
that's what you're getting.
Cups of it, cups in my washing
In your
machine.
filter, you're not telling us about an iron issue, you're telling us about a sediment issue in
Right.
your filters. So the lining job on Kelly Ridge, if you're on Fair Street, we're not proposing to line Fair Street at this stage of the game.
So nothing's changing for Fair Street in this.
Not right now. You got a public hearing, if you wanna add it, ask the board to add it, we can have a look at that. But I think that the larger issue for you, for the problem that you're talking about, is tied to the replacement of the plant, okay, in that unit process, because the diatomaceous earth presents a large component of the problems that we experience in the system.
Okay. So right now, basically, all the things that you've been talking about, I won't have any impact on Fair Street.
It won't have any impact on you.
On me-
Well, no,
on
the plant
making-
will. The plant will help you enormously.
Okay, and when does that start? Like-
Well, the Hazen and Sawyer's report is due in September.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I would say by the time we get done, we'll have another one of these meetings about that. You'll have a much more accurate cost estimate at that point in time, because we'll know what water body we're talking about pulling from for supply. We'll know what unit process we're talking about treating with. Okay, that question has been brought up multiple times this evening. And we'll know whether we're gonna build it in place, or whether we have to buy a new piece of land, and what it's gonna cost to maintain it while we're building it. So we'll have a much sharper answer. I think that the timeline slide showed that as a 2022.
2022.
Okay, so that's when you probably would go to construction. Well, you know, if we get a report in September and the board commissions a design, you're 12 months at least in design plus bid, you know, maybe 15 months. So I would think you would see construction start on that in 2022.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Judy?
I just want to make sure if there's anybody else that hasn't had an opportunity to go again. Thank you. Judy Merritt, Arnold. Mr. Falchetti, I wanted to thank you, first of all, for that explanation. I had asked the question about Lake Oneida and paying. You weren't in the room at the
I
time.
only stirred it one time.
And the board really didn't want to, they were hesitant, so it just gave a greater understanding, so thank you for that. What I want to know on the water storage units that have been relined with epoxy, is that
The tanks?
the tanks?
The storage tanks? Yes,
With epoxy?
with epoxy.
So my question I'm wondering is, what effect on the water does the variances in temperature throughout the seasons have on that? Does, in the extreme heat, in the cold, back and forth,
There virtually is none.
the epoxy doesn't
That
seep?
corrects the problem it has now.
It's the combination of the epoxy lining and the mixing, right? The mixer that Rich talked about earlier helps keep the water uniformly mixed, so that you don't end up with, I think you called it stratification, but basically layers of different temperatures, like what happens in a lake or when you go swimming in the summertime, you know, as the water gets hotter and hotter, right? So you end up kind of with a similar effect of that inside the tank, where you just have different layers of temperature, and the mixer helps make that constant from top to bottom of the tank.
Does it maintain the temperature? Or
No, the temperature is always going to be
It
pretty much what
varies.
the ambient temperature is
Right.
outside of the tank, but inside of the tank, even when it's 90 outside, right? Some water is water up high in the tank is always at a higher temperature than the water down.
But the epoxy doesn't leach into the water.
No, the epoxy, no, that's a separate issue. Okay, the epoxy in and of itself will be cured before we ever put water back in the tank. Okay, there's a whole testing and curing, a whole testing process that goes along with that curing process. So before we put it back into distribution, it's gonna be cured and locked in.
Does that water go through any testing throughout a period of time, just to make sure in the storage tanks? Is it tested?
You mean, subsequent to the use, subsequent to the,
After the process and, you know, down the years?
typically not, because time and history and the history of that industry has proven that it's not a threat. Consequently, it's not a requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Judy. Is there anybody else that hasn't spoke yet that'd like to come up?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just
Sir?
have a quick question about the distribution pipeline. Once this distribution project is complete, is there gonna be any, cast pipe left online?
There may be cast pipe left online. It'll be lined cast, but there may be some in the system. I'm trying to think of the places that could have cast left would be up on Collier. I think maybe some of the stuff up on Lindy, although both the coupons that we took out of those places are ductile, not cast.
I mean, you're saying you're not sure if there's gonna be any online cast or?
No, I think that we're going to catch all of the unlined cast. I thought that your question was, is there gonna be any cast? There's,
Online.
no, to the best of my knowledge, we have right now, what we're proposing to line is all of the existing unlined pipe in the system to the best that we know.
Okay, thanks.
And just as a follow-up to that, the new water treatment plant, while we do treat with orthophosphorus right now, we would still have a corrosion inhibitor in there to help out with these systems. So it would be a lot more effective, right? In a small, if there's anything that was left over, it would be very effective in those areas versus the cap is.
I'm sure you could miss small areas here and there.
Right, so you're talking small segments. If they were missed, we don't believe that that's gonna be the case, as John just stated, but if they were, we're still gonna have the orthophosphate and or corrosion inhibitor control for the system.
Sorry.
Frank?
Oh, I'm sorry, one last clarification. You're, as a board, are gonna vote tonight on the $13 million proposal for the bonding, is that correct?
That is correct.
That's correct.
Okay, and once that happens, the lining project will go out to bid, or you have
The design will go out to bid.
the design phase?
The
Okay.
design phase.
And then the work itself is either, that's further bidding,
Correct. Correct.
in
That's
the normal
further
bidding process.
Just
Right,
keep in
and we
mind,
go-
there's an estoppel period, right, that we have to wait. It's 45 days, right?
It's 20 days from the notice of publication, which is going to give you about 30. What happens is, whenever you pass the resolution, it has to go in the official papers,
Yeah.
and that lag is generally, if you get it in by the following Thursday after the
Yeah.
vote, it'll appear in the farthest out paper a week later, so it's about 27 days.
About 27
One of the
days.
papers comes out on
The
Tuesday.
estoppel period for that.
Okay.
And then we can move forward with
Right,
the
then
design
the
and-
funding is in place, then you can RFP for the design,
Right.
or RFQ, or whatever, however you're gonna do it, and then you're at least authorized, because you have to be able to fund the project in order to bid out any part.
Right.
And
then
then
And you can start the grant process.
Right, we can start the grant process at that time as well, Frank.
One last question, if I may. I know the room had emptied out, but it might sound silly, but there's a reason for this, is who has the naming rights to Lake Glenida?
The naming rights?
Yeah, who owns it?
The
Who owns
city.
who owns the name Lake Glenida?
Yeah.
I'm going really weird with this because
No.
you can go ahead and get some kind of sponsorship and add a name to it, your money source problem can be resolved. I don't care what you call it. If I don't have to pay money, and none of us in here have to pay money, you get a corporate sponsor.
Yeah.
Who owns the name Lake Glenida?
Yeah, Lou would know that.
Lou Margolis would
Lou
know.
might have known
I
that.
asked him.
He
He
would-
owns the name.
Oh, he doesn't know?
He may have named it. I don't know. Wait a minute. Charlie,
I'm asking my dad.
you know that answer to that? Lake Glenida, where'd that name come from? Who owns that name?
It's not a
I
protected
don't know
name.
if it was like Mill Pond and Shore Pond.
Well, then take control of the name and do something with it that we can make money off of it.
Well, it's probably not a protected name. It's not a name, a protected name specifically for that lake, Oneida. It was named when a lot of other lakes were named. I'm not sure who came up with that name.
But is there any naming rights to it? Can we go ahead and sell the name of the lake to someone?
I'd only be worried that it would be New York City making the money
Oh,
off that.
no.
They're the owners, it would be like selling a billboard.
That'll be my employer, but that's another story.
Oh,
I'm just wondering
yeah.
if that's a revenue source.
That's a valid point.
It's had several names.
Was it?
Oh, really?
Since the
It was
1700s,
Swan
it
Pond.
had different names.
Did you mention Swan Pond?
It was
Swan
called
Pond?
Shaw's Pond.
Shaw's Pond.
Shaw's Pond.
Shaw's Pond.
Because my ancestors sold the water rights back in 1875.
See, it started,
Charlie.
Charlie.
Charlie, Charlie.
Get out. Charlie, it's only there by now.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah? And their whole town got covered in water.
She had another
Kenny, is it something that can be looked into?
Sure.
Sure.
I wrote it down. I wrote it down.
Yeah, we can, yes.
You know, subway stations have been renamed based upon corporate sponsors, so.
Oh, I don't know if we,
Well, I'm just,
it's a good, yeah, good point, thank you, yeah, good. Yes,
What is the water meter project?
the water meter
Yeah,
project.
what is it?
What is it? We're installing new, their radio read meters throughout the town. There's about 4,000 of them that we're gonna be installing. They're radio read, they work off the cloud. In other words, the meter reading that shows the amount of, what your consumption is per home in the community. Currently, you have to read your own meter. So you have to find your meter, and then there's a card that's sent to you by the controller's office, which is the water department, and you have to indicate what the meter reading is on your card, send it back to the water department, and then they in turn send you a water bill for your usage.
Right, I know.
What the new radio read meters do is it eliminates you having to read your own meter.
But what happened to that?
The signal is sent, the signal's transmitted through the cloud. It's radio frequency.
Yeah, it's a cellular base.
It's a cellular base.
So that we no longer will be.
And that goes directly to the controller's office, and then a bill is generated off your reading.
So, and users will have the opportunity to go online or use their cell phone and get an app so that you can actually see water uses. There's a lot of options that are out there for the system itself, but it's an upgrade to the existing.
So it's an upgrade.
What we have right now is gonna help out the users, it's gonna help out the controllers department.
And it's also alleviate the estimated bill.
Yeah, it'll alleviate the estimated bill.
Still at least.
Just make sure it's.
Well, what we find is about 50% of the people actually read their meters and send their cards in, so they get an estimated bill. And when they go to sell their house, prior to the closing, we do a meter read, a final read of your meter. And in a lot of cases, people have gotten a $3,000 or $4,000 bill at the closing for their water, and they're like, where did this come from? Well, you haven't read your meter in 10 years. Oh, yeah, in one, yeah, in your brother's case, yeah. So it's a great investment for the town and for the water users, the homeowners.
When is that gonna be finalized? Because I thought that was already discussed and that was.
It's all approved.
So it's gonna start on Monday with install, but it's starting over in Cornwall Water District 4, which is the Lake Baldwin area. We started out with some of the smaller districts first. It's not gonna be hitting Cornwall Water 2 until later on this year, probably the fall, but maybe sooner.
Is that where someone has to come into the house?
Yes.
You'll get notified, you'll get a letter, schedule an appointment.
Okay.
Right, and you should make sure that your meter is clear, that people can access it and go with it from there.
Thanks, Judy.
Sorry. That was gonna be back. Thank you for giving me the answers on there. Couple questions here. I think controller brought up the sewer maintenance. I know we're talking about water and all that, right? Then it sounds like the sewer bond has gone, but it sounds like a lot of what we haven't talked about is the maintenance on the water that we're gonna do. So I'm also now thinking, well, what's hanging out on the sewer side that hasn't been maintained properly, that in 5 or 6 years, something else is gonna happen? So one, from the sewer,
can we make sure we're doing the proper maintenance on that side? And two, as all the work's being done on the water, can we talk about maintenance contracts or, because for the Infomark, the Severn Trent replacement, you know, it's like, you know, I made the assumption that if they were responsible for fixing pipe, that they were responsible for making sure that pipe was clean, and that was a bad assumption. So I know someone mentioned that 2 years ago the contract was renegotiated. I think that needs to be reviewed whenever that contract comes up, to hold them account. Someone needs to be held accountable on the maintenance of the stuff. I'm happy you pay for it, so we need to better improve, but we gotta have the proper maintenance so we can actually have stuff like a 1936 tank still lasting. So that's one thing I'd like to do. And as far as the water tower, I understand that the Kelly Ridge, that's where I live, is what, 6-inch pipe or something? And it's probably 60 to 70% plugged, roughly, maybe. And once that gets cleared out, water pressure is going to flow. But is there a calculation that can be done to ensure that us on the upper part of Kelly Ridge and on the Everett Road, that the expected water pressure, PSI as well as water flow, is going to be what we expected with the clean? Because I hate to reline a tank and do all the nice things with the tank and even get the pipe relined and seeing that the water pressure just isn't right yet. So how do we, there must be a calculation that can be done.
We'll run that calculation.
Yeah.
I'll get it for you.
Perfect, because I hate to do all this and still not be able to have water flowing. Tanks upgrade, and oh, the valve replacements. The lady here before, she mentioned something about, you know, making sure that out of the 51 miles, everything was working good, right? My assumption is the valve replacements are inline valves, right? So they'll have to be somehow shut off, cut out, and replaced, right? And I think these valve replacements will be spread out across the whole 51 miles, I'm assuming. So as you're doing the valve replacement, I think it's safe to assume you'll also be looking at the piping there to make sure that everything is good, so that we can avoid what the ladies mentioned, that in a couple of years we come back. Is that a safe assumption?
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
One other.
Sure, you want to come up?
Can I speak loud enough?
No, so the people at home can, we're taping the meeting.
All right. So it's not a question, it's just a suggestion, because it seems like there's a lot of work, I don't know if you guys can hear me, a lot of work to be done still on the plant in terms of the report that's going to be submitted in September and all that. It seems like there are three major issues related to that plant. The biggest seems like the diatomaceous earth problem with the seeping through the screens, but then there's also questions about, will we have capacity and need to expand that, and we need to change the water source from Glen Ida to another water source. When you guys come back with the documents, can you unpack that a little? Like, are there differential costs for those three pieces? Like, is it possible to maintain the current plant and maybe retrofit it for something that's non-DE, like a mechanical filter? Can that be costed separately from what if we have to expand capacity? What if we have to go to different water sources? Just to give us that information to see what the different issues are costing in a larger project. Just a suggestion. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to come up and comment on this matter, on this topic? Come on up at this time. Did you give us your email address? You have it? Okay. We'll take that and make sure that, well, Mary Ann, can you email them the pie chart next week? We got that. Did you have something else?
Yes, I have some more comments. So based on the numbers the gentleman over there gave me, I have found if we increase the taxes in order to fund our water district, it would require about $4,720 a year for a house valued at $472,000. $4,720 a year paid to the water district. Is that accurate?
No, that wasn't the number.
Not to any numbers that I would have given out previously.
Okay, that's my mistake.
No, the only number that I know of on the water district would be what the comptroller would have quoted out based on either the 15 up to the 30-year.
Yes, the highest parcel would have been $1,180 a year increase.
1353, and that would be if you did the 585 at 15 years, 155 for the meters at 5 years, and then the plant at 613 for 15 years gives you the 1353. On the 30-year, it would bring it down to 915, which would include the 30-year on the pipe, the 5-year on the water, and the 30-year on the plant. And that would be if it was all built out altogether and that was immediately put into effect, but.
Okay, so if we have a $1,350 increase on our water bill, it's going to be about $5,400 a year. Does that sound accurate?
No, that number's definitely too high.
If you were paying, let's say you paid $200 4 times a year for your water, now you're gonna pay $500 4 times a year for your water approximately?
So
That would be the accurate, I think. Yeah. Basically, you're gonna add anywhere from 900 to 1350 additional cost for your water for a year.
Okay.
When everything is done, built out.
Not the use.
That's not the use, right, that's just the additional tax there. That's just additional tax there.
But the more water you use, the higher your usage is gonna go up.
And then that'll be based on the rate that the city gives each year.
Right.
Which would challenge you.
Yeah.
So what I'm understanding is, even on my meager single salary of $7,800 a year, I could afford the increased water bill and have money to spare for my food, for my rent, and with the support of my 4 other family members, we could essentially pay every expense we have and still have money to spare. Because all 5 of us are employed, even if we will have to have full-time minimum wage employment, that would enable us to get a sufficient amount to pay our taxes. And the water bill, as you mentioned earlier, is a very small part, will be 20% of our total tax bill, and at a lower than $4,700 cost a year, someone who's making above the poverty line for a family of 5, let's say, of $30,000 is going to have 5 family members who potentially can get an income, as in my family, and so it seems there's not much to pay in this water bill. If you look at every household, a house at $472,000 can support a family of 5 easily, or a family of 7 if we go up to a higher bracket. So I can't understand how this minor increase in taxes for an essential part of our way of living and our very essence as living creatures, and for the future of my generation and my parents' generation, I can't see how a $1,350 increase a year is unaffordable to anyone above the poverty line. It makes no sense. It seems you need high depth in other areas in order to not afford this meager tax increase.
I hear what you're saying, but you need to understand that every household is different. Some people may have some medical issues that they have to draw out of it. So in some cases, if someone is on a fixed income, $1,300 a year is a lot to them, okay? Because they may have, their budget per se. You're talking about your budget, okay? And you guys may be able to afford that, but somebody else may not do, because they may only have $1,300 extra for the year. So now they're using that in taxes. So while you, per se, I'm gonna say, is a lucky one, that can afford it, and I think it's wonderful, some people may not be able to, and that's why we're conscious of everybody's situations, because there are some people that can afford a lot more than that, and then there's some people that can't afford it. And then there's the people like you that, yes, we can afford it, and it's for the water, and let's go ahead and do it. So that's why we're having the meetings, to get everybody. But I certainly hear what you're saying, you know, but we don't know what is going on in other people's households. Yeah.
Everybody's ability to pay is gonna vary depending on the household, depending on your household income. You know, you had stated that there might be 5 family members that, or there's an income coming in from each one. You don't have to tell me, but it sounds to me like there might be. So, but it also sounds like you might be living on a tight budget also. And any increase could affect that. And we're mindful of that. We understand that. We're very sensitive of that. And we realize that not everybody is gonna have the same ability to pay any increase as the other may have. So it all depends on the whole demographics of your family and, you know, how you're running your household as far as ability to pay. Everybody's ability to pay varies depending on their income and what their other needs are and other obligations might be. But we're gonna make it as soft as we possibly can on everyone, all right? But with the understanding that we do need to maintain our water system. We do have to upgrade it and make improvements to it from time to time. But we've accepted and realized that this system does need work. Everybody would like clean water. Everybody expects good quality potable drinking water. But there's a price to pay for that also, to maintain that cleanness, which everybody wants, which we want. That's our desire, so. We'll go as easy as we possibly can on everyone, including yourself. And we just urge people when we have these meetings to continue to attend them, come to them, because that's where you get your best feedback from us to you, is if you're here in the room, you know, so.
Yeah. And we'll make sure we get you that pie chart also. Mary Ann's gonna send that to you.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, so keep watching for announcements for these meetings and please keep showing up. Okay? Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
All right. Is there anyone else that would like to come up at this time on this topic? No? Okay, we have to continue our meeting. We have to move on to our agenda. I need a motion. Okay, motion made by Councilman Panacci.
Oh, thank you,
Kevin, thanks a lot. Seconded by Councilman McDonough. All those in favor?
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you
Bye,
for
Harriet.
being here. Good night.